You know that look family gives you when they think you are being dramatic? They laughed when I said, "Do not touch my work." They called them basic files. Then they opened them, snapped photos, and hit send. 12 minutes later, my parents' driveway was swarming with black SUVs, and the front door was no longer a door. That night I learned a cold truth. One moment of family curiosity can turn into a federal felony. My name is Violet Garcia. I am 34 years old. To the United States government, I am a senior intelligence analyst for the National Security Liaison Directorate, or NSLD for short. It is a frighteningly boring name for a frighteningly serious agency. I specialize in infrastructure threat assessment and homeland security logistics. I hold a top-secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance, specifically regarding domestic grid vulnerabilities. I know exactly how many minutes of fuel are left in the backup generators of the 3 largest hospitals in New York City. I know which bridges in the tri-state area have structural weaknesses that could be exploited by a single well-placed charge. I know these things so that I can tell the people with guns where to stand and the people with badges who to arrest, to my family. However, I am just a moody paperwork shuffler who takes herself way too seriously. This disconnect is the defining feature of my adult life. It is the reason I sat in my car for 10 full minutes before unbuckling my seatbelt, staring at the beige siding of my parents' house in Maple Hollow, Maryland. It was a perfectly manicured house in a perfectly manicured town. The kind of place where the biggest scandal of the year involves a homeowner association dispute over the height of a fence. It was safe. It was quiet. It was everything my job was designed to protect, and yet, walking through that front door always felt like stepping into a hostile interrogation room where the interrogators were armed with passive-aggressive compliments and spinach dip. I checked my phone. It was clear. No red flags. No urgent pings from the encrypted app that governed my waking hours. I had promised myself this weekend would be different. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. That is a big number. 4 decades of marriage deserved respect. They deserved a daughter who was present, not one mentally calculating the blast radius of a dirty bomb in a metropolitan subway system. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat. It was a nondescript black messenger bag, heavy and reinforced with Kevlar lining. Inside was a government-issued laptop that cost more than my father's first 3 cars combined. Along with a secure token and a physical folder of hard-copy briefs I was supposed to review on Monday. I slung it over my shoulder, took a deep breath that tasted of suburban cut grass and charcoal grills, and walked up the driveway. The moment I stepped inside, the noise hit me. My family is not loud in a chaotic way. They are loud in a performative way. They project success. Brent was already there, holding court in the living room. My older brother is 37, handsome in a way that suggests he spends a lot of money on moisturizers, and is the owner of a boutique marketing firm called Ovate Amplify. I still do not know what that means, and I am fairly certain he does not either. But it allows him to drive a Porsche and talk about synergy with a straight face. He was in the middle of a story, gesturing wildly with a glass of scotch. So I told the client, "Look, you aren't buying a logo," Brent said, his voice booming. "You are buying a legacy. You are buying the feeling of sunrise on a Tuesday." And boom, he signed the check right there. $15,000 for a rebranding package that took my team 3 hours. Easy money. My father, Ray, slapped his knee, beaming. "That is my boy. Work smart, not hard. That is the Garcia way." My mother, Linda, looked up from the appetizer tray she was arranging. Her eyes scanned me, lingering on my simple gray blazer and the heavy bag on my shoulder. Her smile was tight. "Violet," she said, her tone pitching up an octave. "You made it. We were worried you were stuck doing whatever it is you do." Traffic was fine. "Mom," I said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She smelled of lavender and hairspray. "Happy anniversary." "You look tired," she noted immediately. "Does the government not let you sleep? Or are you just frowning so much it's stuck that way?" "I'm fine. Mom, just a long week." Well, put that heavy bag down, she said, gesturing to the hallway. Join the party. Your sister is in the kitchen mixing drinks. I did not put the bag in the hallway. I never put the bag in the hallway. That bag stays within my line of sight or behind a locked door. It is rule 1. I walked into the kitchen, the bag still thumping against my hip. Danielle was there, slicing limes with the precision of a surgeon, which was fitting since she is an emergency room doctor. Danielle is the golden child's golden child. If Brent is the family's wallet, Danielle is the family's conscience. She saves lives. She has blood on her scrubs. She has stories about pulling bullets out of teenagers and restarting hearts. Her trauma is heroic. My trauma is classified. Hey, Spook, Danielle said without looking up. She calls me Spook. She thinks it is hilarious. I think it is reductive. Hi, Danny. She wiped her hands on a towel and turned to look at me. Her gaze dropped to the bag. Seriously? She asked, a smirk playing on her lips. We promised no work this weekend. Dad made a whole speech about it. He used the word unplugged 3 times. It was painful. I'm not working, I lied. I just can't leave this in the car. Liability issues. You act like you're carrying the nuclear codes, Danielle scoffed, handing me a glass of wine. It's paperwork. Vi, it's spreadsheets about supply chains. Relax. Nobody wants to steal your spreadsheets. It's not spreadsheets, I said automatically. Taking the wine. It's infrastructure data. Right. Infrastructure, potholes, and power lines. She clinked her glass against mine. So mysterious. Just try to be normal for 2 days, okay? For Mom and Dad, they really want a picture of us where you don't look like you're scanning the perimeter for snipers. I forced a smile. I'll do my best. We moved back to the living room. The dynamic shifted instantly. When Danielle entered, the room seemed to brighten. My father stood up to hug her. Brent stopped talking about himself for 5 seconds to ask her about the hospital. They engaged in a lively back and forth about a multi-car pileup she had handled on I-95. It was gruesome, visceral, and real. Everyone hung on her every word. Then, there was a lull. The attention turned to me. I stiffened. This was the part where I failed to perform. So, Violet, my father said, settling back into his recliner. How is the bureau, or the agency? I can never remember which acronym you are this month. NSLD, Dad. It's going well. We're busy. Busy doing what? Brent asked, leaning forward. Come on, give us something. You've been there 6 years. I still tell people you're basically a librarian for the CIA because I have no idea what else to say. I'm an analyst. Brent, I analyze threats. What threats? Brent challenged, grinning. Is Canada invading? Are the squirrels plotting a coup? They laughed, a collective, warm, family chuckle at my expense. It's complicated, I said, my voice tight. I track vulnerabilities in domestic systems. Power grids, water treatment, transport hubs. I make sure bad actors can't shut them down. See? You make it sound so dramatic, my mother chimed in, passing a plate of stuffed mushrooms. You always do that. Bad actors. Vulnerabilities. It's just office work. Honey, you sit at a desk, you type on a computer, you aren't out there chasing bad guys. I didn't say I chased people, Mom, but the information I handle is dangerous if it gets out. Brent rolled his eyes. Okay, look, I'm a marketing guy. I know branding. Your brand right now is buzzkill. You need to rebrand to useful. Why don't you just show us some of the basic stuff? Just a peek. Maybe I can help you jazz up those reports. Make you look better to your bosses. I bet your slide decks are a tragedy of Times New Roman. My grip on the strap of my bag tightened until my knuckles turned white. Brent, I said, keeping my voice level, I cannot show you anything. It is a felony for me to show you anything. It is a felony for you to even look at the cover sheets. Oh, please, Danielle groaned from the sofa. Stop with the legal mumbo-jumbo. You're doing that thing again where you hide behind the secret stamp to avoid having a real conversation with us. It's like when we were kids and you locked your diary. Nobody cares about your diary. Violet? This isn't a diary, I snapped. The sharpness in my voice made the room go quiet for a second. This isn't a game. Do not touch my bag. Do not go near my laptop. Do not ask to see basic files. There is no such thing as a basic file in my line of work. My father sighed. A heavy, disappointed sound. All right. Don't get defensive. We're just trying to take an interest in your life. You push us away so hard. You know that? I'm not pushing you away. I am following federal law. You're ruining the vibe, Brent muttered into his drink. I stood up. I needed to get away from them before I said something that would ruin the entire weekend. I'm going to put my stuff in my room. I'll be right down. Make sure you lock the door, Brent called out sarcastically as I walked toward the stairs. Wouldn't want the Russians to steal your mushroom recipe. I walked up the stairs, my heart hammering a slow, angry rhythm against my ribs. My old bedroom was at the end of the hall. It had not changed much in 15 years. The same pale blue wallpaper, the same twin bed, but now it was a temporary secure zone. I entered the room and closed the door. I did not just close it. I engaged the lock. Then I placed the bag on the desk. I checked the zippers, still sealed. I took a breath, trying to push down the irritation. They were family. They loved me. They just didn't get it. They lived in a world where mistakes meant a bad Yelp review or a malpractice insurance claim. They did not live in a world where a mistake meant a city block goes dark. I was about to turn around and go back downstairs, to apologize, to be the good daughter. When my phone vibrated in my pocket, it was not a text. It was a call. I pulled it out. The screen was blank. No caller ID. Just a pulsating gray icon. My stomach dropped through the floor. That icon meant it was the internal secure line. I answered it on the first ring. Garcia. The voice on the other end was Director Holloway. He did not say hello. He did not ask how my weekend was. His voice was like grinding gravel. Garcia, are you near your terminal? I have my field unit, sir, but I'm off rotation. I'm at my parents' house in Maryland. I don't care if you are on the moon, Holloway said. We just intercepted a packet regarding the Northeast Corridor Rail signaling system. It matches the signature you flagged 3 months ago. The chatter is spiking. We think it's a dry run for something imminent. I looked at the closed door of my bedroom. Downstairs. I could hear my brother laughing. I could hear the clink of glasses. Sir, I whispered, I don't have a SCIF here. I can't process TS data in a civilian residence. The protocol assumes we have time. Holloway cut me off. We don't. I need eyes on this raw data now. You're the only one who knows the syntax for this specific threat actor. I am authorizing a remote burst. One-time access. I hesitated. This was bad. Doing high-level analysis on a portable rig in a non-secure environment was a nightmare. If anyone walked in, if anyone saw the screen, if the network handshaking failed, Violet, Holloway said, and the use of my first name chilled me more than his shouting. If you accept this packet, you have to work it tonight. You have to scrub it, assess the threat level, and give me a go or no-go for a shutdown recommendation within 4 hours. Can you do it? I looked at the bag on the desk. I thought about the unplugged weekend. I thought about Brent's jokes and my mother's disappointment. Yes, sir, I said. Send the packet. Sending now. Do not let that terminal out of your sight. If this leaks. Garcia. It's not just your job. It's federal prison. The line went dead. I stood there in the silence of my childhood bedroom. The air felt thinner. Downstairs, my mother was calling my name. Violet, come down. We're opening the good wine. Coming, I yelled back, my voice cracking slightly. I walked over to the desk and unzipped the bag. I took out the heavy, matte black laptop. I took out the token, and then, distracted by the shouting downstairs, I made the first mistake. I took out the physical folder, the basic work files my brother was so curious about, and set them on the edge of the desk. Just to make room for the mouse, I sat down. The screen flared to life, asking for a biometric scan. I placed my thumb on the reader. The weekend was over. The nightmare was just beginning. The glow of the secure terminal was the only light in the room. It cast a harsh, spectral blue square against the faded floral wallpaper that had lined these walls since I was 12 years old. My childhood bedroom smelled of dust and old potpourri, a scent that usually triggered a wave of nostalgia, but tonight it only smelled like suffocation. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, my back hunched over the portable workstation. The laptop was a beast of a machine, reinforced with a magnesium alloy chassis and running a custom operating system that did not exist on the commercial market. It hummed aggressively, the cooling fans working overtime to dissipate the heat generated by the encryption protocols. On the screen, lines of raw telemetry cascaded in a waterfall of neon green and amber. This was the packet Director Holloway had screamed about. It was not just data. It was the heartbeat of the Northeast Corridor rail network. I was looking at real-time signaling logs for the transit lines running from Washington, D.C. up to Boston. Someone was pinging the switching nodes. It was subtle, buried under layers of routine maintenance traffic, but to a trained eye, it looked like a burglar testing doorknobs to see which one was unlocked. If they found a way in, they could scramble the signals. They could tell a southbound express train that the track ahead was clear when a northbound freight train was barreling down the same line at 80 miles per hour. My hands flew across the keyboard. I had to build a sandbox environment, isolate the suspicious pings, and trace their origin without tipping off the intruder that they were being watched. It was delicate, high-pressure surgery, and I was performing it on a shaky bedside table with a porcelain figurine of a shepherdess staring at me. I established the perimeter. I initiated the handshake protocol. The progress bar crawled. 20%, 30%. I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of physical hard copy notes. These were chain of custody forms and rough topological graphs I had printed at the office earlier that day for review. They were sensitive, technically classified as confidentially restricted, but they were not the digital keys to the kingdom. I needed them for reference to cross-check the node identifiers. I laid them out on the edge of the desk, right next to a dried-out corsage from my senior prom. That was the mistake. It was a spatial error. The desk was too small. The papers hung precariously over the edge, looking for all the world like random scrap paper. Then the knocking started. It was a polite, rhythmic rap, the kind that demands entry under the guise of courtesy. Violet? It was my mother. Violet? Honey? Are you still in there? I did not stop typing. I am busy, Mom. We are cutting the cake, she said through the wood. Dad is waiting for you to make the toast. You know he loves your toasts. You always use such big words. I cannot come down, I said, my voice tight. I told you, I have to finish this. It is Saturday night, she persisted. The handle jiggling slightly, the door was locked. I had engaged the push-button privacy lock on the knob, the kind you can pop open with a bent paper clip if you are determined enough. Work is for weekdays. Come on, just 10 minutes. The ice cream is melting. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. The disconnect was maddening. On my screen, a potential collision vector was forming near Philadelphia. Outside my door, the crisis was melting vanilla bean ice cream. Mom, please, I said, louder this time. Go ahead without me. I will be down when I can. There was a huff of breath on the other side, audible even through the door. Then footsteps retreated. I exhaled and turned back to the screen. The trace was 60% complete. I needed to verify the IP latencies. I grabbed one of the papers from the stack, scanned the graph, and typed in a command sequence. The intruder was using a bouncing signal, hopping through servers in Estonia and Brazil. But they were sloppy. They left a timing artifact. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was Brent. He did not wait for an answer before trying the handle. He rattled it aggressively. Whoa, he said, his voice muffled by the door. Locked? Seriously? What are you doing in there? Building a bomb? Go away. Brent, I snapped. Come on. Vi, You are being weird. Everyone is downstairs asking where the mystery woman is. You are making Dad look bad. He is trying to brag about his big-shot government daughter, and she is hiding in her room like a sullen teenager. I am working, I said, emphasizing each word. This is not a game. Leave me alone. Is this about the basic files? He taunted. Are you scared I'm going to see your formatting? I promise I will not critique your font choice too hard. Just open up. Let me bring you a slice of cake. We can bond. I can give you some tips on how to present this stuff so it actually sounds impressive. My blood pressure spiked. The arrogance was suffocating. He thought my job was a PowerPoint presentation. He thought I was generating reports for a middle manager to file away in a basement. He had no concept that the formatting he wanted to see was a kill chain analysis. Brent, I said, keeping my voice dangerously low, if you do not step away from this door, I will never speak to you again. Silence. Then a laugh. Okay. Dramatic much? God, you are intense. Fine. Stay in your bunker. We will save you a corner piece. I heard him walk away. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a potent cocktail of adrenaline and rage. I forced myself to breathe. In, out. Focus on the data. Focus on the Philadelphia node. I successfully isolated the malicious packet. It was a worm, designed to override the fail-safes in the switching relays. I began the quarantine procedure. This was the critical phase. I had to build a digital wall around the worm before it could replicate. Violet, Danielle. Her voice was not loud, but it cut deeper than the others. She was standing right against the door. Go away, Danny, I whispered, typing furiously. You know what you are doing, right? Danielle said. Her tone was clinical, the same voice she used to tell families that their loved one had not made it. You are using this agent routine to punish us. You think because you have a clearance, you are better than this family. You think we are small. That is not true, I said, though my eyes never left the screen. This is urgent. Everything is urgent with you, she countered. That is how you avoid intimacy. You create a crisis so you do not have to have a conversation. You lock the door so no one can see that you do not know how to relate to us anymore. Mom is downstairs crying. Violet, she thinks she failed you. She thinks you hate us. The words hit me in the chest. I stopped typing for 1 second. The cursor blinked. I do not hate you, I said, my voice trembling. I am trying to protect you. You have no idea what is out there. Then tell us, she challenged. Open the door and tell us. I can't. Then you are choosing the job over the people who made you. She did not wait for a reply. She walked away. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of unsaid things and the hum of the laptop fan. I turned back to the work. I had to finish. If I stopped now, the worm would break containment. I worked in a fugue state for the next 40 minutes. I routed the traffic, patched the vulnerability, and logged the signature of the attacker. It was done. The immediate threat was neutralized. I just needed to compile the report and send the final confirmation to Holloway. I leaned back, rolling my neck. The tension in my shoulders was a physical knot. My throat felt like sandpaper. I had not taken a sip of water since I arrived. The adrenaline crash was hitting me, leaving me parched and dizzy. Then, a message box popped up on my secure screen. It was a direct alert from the internal monitoring system. The text was bright red against the black background. System alert. Do not leave device unattended. Active session in progress. Any breach of custody will result in immediate termination and legal action. I stared at the warning. It was standard protocol. I knew it, but my throat was burning. I just needed water. 1 glass. The kitchen was right at the bottom of the stairs. I could run down, grab a bottle, and be back in 90 seconds. I looked at the door. It was locked. I looked at the laptop. I hit the keystroke to lock the session. The screen went black, replaced by a password prompt that required a 20-character alphanumeric key and a biometric scan to reopen. It was secure. Nothing could get into that machine without my thumbprint. I stood up, I stretched, I looked at the desk, the stack of papers, the topological graphs and chain of custody forms, sat on the edge. I hesitated. I should put them in the bag. I should zip the bag. But I was in my parents' house. My family was downstairs, probably watching television or cleaning up the cake. The door was locked. Who was going to come in? They had all given up on me. They were angry. They were not going to try to talk to me again tonight. I grabbed the empty glass from the nightstand. I unlocked the door. I peeked into the hallway. It was empty. The lights were dimmed. I could hear the faint sound of the television from the living room. I stepped out, pulling the door shut behind me until I heard the latch click. I tested it. Locked. I walked softly down the hallway, the carpet muffling my steps. I reached the landing and looked down. The living room was empty. They must be in the kitchen or on the patio. Perfect. I hurried down the stairs, moving like a ghost. I went into the kitchen. It was empty. A half-eaten cake sat on the counter. The sink was full of dishes. I opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. I uncapped it and downed half of it in one long gulp. The cool liquid was a relief. I checked my watch. 2 minutes had passed. I was safe. I turned to go back upstairs, and then I heard it. It was a sound that did not belong in a house at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. It was a mechanical whir, followed by the rhythmic chug-chug slide of paper feeding through rollers. It was coming from the study, my father's study, the room directly below my bedroom. My blood ran cold. The water bottle slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a loud thud, but I did not even look at it. Why was the printer running? My father retired 2 years ago. He never printed anything. The only time that printer ran was when he needed to print a return label for an Amazon package. And he certainly wasn't doing that in the middle of his anniversary party. I walked toward the study. The door was ajar. The rhythmic chug-chug slide grew louder. It sounded fast. This was not a cheap inkjet printing a single page. This was a high-speed laser cycle. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, lit only by the green display light of the large multifunction printer in the corner. But the printer was not alone. The output tray was filling up. Page after page was sliding out, stacking up in a neat pile. I stepped closer, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at the paper sitting on top of the tray. It was a graph, a topological node graph of the Philadelphia transit grid. My eyes widened in horror. That paper was upstairs. I had left it on my desk. I had locked the door. I looked up. The ceiling of the study was the floor of my bedroom. I listened. Above me, the floorboards creaked. Someone was walking around in my room. The printer whirred again, spitting out another sheet. This one was a scan of a document. I recognized the header. It was the chain of custody form I had left on the edge of the desk. Someone was in my room. They had bypassed the lock. They were not just looking. They were using the scan-to-print function on the home network. They were copying my physical files to the downstairs printer. I turned to run up the stairs. But then the printer made a different sound, a beep, a digital chirp that signaled a transmission was complete. The small LCD screen on the printer flashed a message. Scan complete. Sent to email address redacted. They had not just printed it, they had emailed it. I stood there, frozen, as the realization crashed over me. I had left the room for 6 minutes. In those 6 minutes, my basic work files had just been broadcast to the internet, and based on the stamp on the paper, the person who had sent them was not a stranger. I sprinted for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, the sound of the printer still echoing in my ears like a death knell. I stood at the top of the stairs, my hand hovering over the doorknob of my bedroom. The hallway was silent, a stark contrast to the mechanical screech of the printer that was still echoing in my mind from the floor below. I had sprinted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, driven by a panic so sharp it tasted like copper in my mouth. The door was locked. I jiggled the handle. It held firm. The privacy lock I had engaged was still set. This physical fact should have been comforting. It should have meant that the sanctuary was intact, that the space had not been violated. But I knew better. The printer downstairs had not hallucinated a topological graph of the Philadelphia transit grid. I pulled the emergency pin from my keychain. a small, straight piece of steel I kept for situations exactly like this, and popped the lock. It clicked open with a pathetic ease that mocked my earlier sense of security. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room looked exactly as I had left it. The bed was made, the window was closed, the heavy black laptop sat on the desk, its screen dark, the small LED on the side pulsing a slow, steady green to indicate it was in sleep mode. But the air felt different. It is a sensation you develop after years in intelligence. You learn to memorize the displacement of air, the specific stillness of a room that has been empty. This room was not still. It felt agitated. I walked to the desk. My eyes went immediately to the edge where I had left the stack of reference notes. They were there, but they were wrong. I had left them fanned out slightly. The corner of the top page aligned with the scratched groove in the wood that I remembered making with a protractor when I was 14. Now, the stack was squared off, neat, tidy. I reached out and touched the paper. It was warm, not warm from the room temperature, but warm from handling. I flipped through them. Page 1 was a header sheet. Page 2 was a glossary of terms. Page 3 should have been the sector map of the Northeast Corridor. Page 3 was gone. My stomach dropped. I flipped faster. Page 4 was there. Page 5 was gone. I looked at the bag on the floor. I had left it zipped. It was still zipped, but the zippers were resting on the left side of the track. I always zip to the right. Always. It is muscle memory, drilled into me during field training. Zip to the right. Fold the pull tab down. The pull tab was facing up. They had not just taken the papers on the desk. They had opened the bag. I did not scream. I did not cry. A cold, hard shell formed over my emotions, sealing away the daughter who wanted to be liked and leaving only the analyst who needed to contain a breach. I turned around and walked out of the room. I did not run this time. Running implies panic, and panic leads to mistakes. I walked with a heavy, deliberate cadence. I went down the stairs. The sound of laughter drifted from the living room. It was a light, airy sound. The sound of people who have no idea that they are standing on a landmine. I turned the corner into the living room. The scene before me was so surreal it almost looked staged. My family was gathered around the large oak coffee table. My mother was sitting on the sofa, a glass of Chardonnay in one hand. My father was in his recliner. Brent and Danielle were leaning over the table, and there, spread out between the cheese plate and the crystal vase of roses, were my files. They were passing them around. My mother was holding the sector map of the Northeast Corridor, the missing page 3. She was holding it casually, pinching the corner with 2 fingers as if it were a recipe for lemon bars that she was considering trying. "It is just so technical," she was saying, squinting at the dense lines of the power grid schematic. "I do not see why Violet makes such a fuss. It looks like the wiring diagram for the toaster." "That is because you are looking at it wrong." "Mom," Brent said. He was holding another page. A high-resolution satellite surveillance image of a rail yard in New Jersey. "Look at the resolution on this. You can read the license plate on that truck. This is cool. This is legitimate spy stuff." "It is not spy stuff," Danielle said, rolling her eyes. She picked up a threat assessment summary marked with a bright red header that read, "Top secret, / no foreign." "It is just data. Look, it says risk probability. It is exactly like the actuarial tables we use at the hospital." She acts like she is hunting Jason Bourne, but she is just doing risk management. I stood in the archway, my shadow stretching across the Persian rug. "Put it down," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor blade. The laughter died instantly. 4 heads turned to look at me. "Oh, there she is," my mother said, smiling as if nothing were wrong. She waved the classified document at me. "Violet, honey, come sit. We were just looking. We wanted to see what was so important that you had to lock yourself away." "I said put it down," I repeated. I walked into the room. I did not look at their faces. I looked at their hands. "Put the papers on the table. Step away from them. Now." "Jesus, Violet," Brent scoffed. He did not put the paper down. He held it up higher. Relax. We are not selling it to the Russians. We are your family. Mom just wanted to understand what you do. You are so secretive. It hurts her feelings. We are just demystifying the basic files. Those are not basic files, I said, my voice vibrating with suppressed intensity. That document in your hand is classified top secret. The fact that you are holding it is a felony. The fact that you removed it from my room is a felony. We did not remove it, my father said. Piping up from his chair, he looked defensive, his face flushing slightly. We just borrowed it. The door popped right open. You should fix that lock. It is flimsy. You picked the lock. Dad? I asked, looking at him. I used the master key, he muttered. It is my house, Violet. There are no locked doors in this house. We do not keep secrets here. I do, I said. I keep secrets that keep you alive. Oh, stop it, Danielle groaned. She tossed the threat assessment onto the table. It slid across the wood and hit the cheese knife. You are so dramatic. Keep us alive. It is a picture of a train station. Violet, get over yourself. It is an infrastructure target, I said. And you have compromised the chain of custody. Chain of custody, Brent mimicked, making a face. Blah, blah, blah. You know, for a smart girl, you really know how to suck the air out of a room. Look, if it makes you feel better, I will prove to you that nobody cares. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. My heart stopped. It physically stopped beating for a second. What are you doing? I asked. I am taking a picture, Brent said, unlocking his screen. He held the phone up, aiming the camera lens at the satellite image in his other hand. I am going to send it to the group chat. Show everyone that my little sister is actually doing cool work instead of just pushing pencils. Maybe get you some respect. The world narrowed down to the black circle of his camera lens. If he took that picture, the image would be processed by his phone's operating system. It would be backed up to his cloud storage. It would travel through civilian servers. The metadata would flag it. The image recognition algorithms at the NSA, which scans specifically for leakage of this exact type of document, would trigger a Tier 1 alert. It wouldn't just be a reprimand, it would be a raid. Brent, I shouted. The sound was so loud it made my mother jump. Do not take that picture. Whoa, Brent laughed, backing up a step, but keeping the phone raised. Touchy, what are you going to do? Arrest me? I am telling you to lower the device, I said. I stepped forward. My hand moved instinctively to my hip, reaching for a weapon I was not wearing. The muscle memory was terrifying. If you take a photograph of that document, you will trigger a federal response that you cannot stop. Put the phone down, now. You are crazy, Brent said, shaking his head. You are actually crazy. It is a piece of paper. His thumb hovered over the shutter button. Brent, look at me, I said, my voice dropping to a register I usually saved for field ops. I am not your sister right now. I am a federal agent giving you a lawful order. If that shutter clicks, you go to prison, not jail, prison. Put the phone down. The room went dead silent. The air conditioning hummed. My mother looked at me with wide, fearful eyes, as if she was seeing a stranger wearing her daughter's face. Brent hesitated. He looked at my eyes. He saw something there that made his smile falter. The arrogance cracked, just for a second. You are serious, he whispered. Deadly, I said. He lowered the phone. He tossed the paper onto the table with a sneer. Fine. God, you are psychotic. You ruin everything. You know that? We were having a nice time. You are threatening your own brother with prison? Danielle asked, her voice shrill. She stood up, moving to stand next to Brent. Over a piece of paper? You have lost your mind. Violet, you are using these laws to bully us. You want to be important so badly that you are willing to terrorize Mom and Dad in their own living room. I am trying to save you from yourselves, I said, my hands shaking. I moved to the table. I needed to gather the documents. I needed to do a damage assessment. I reached for the pile. My hands swept over the papers, counting them, the map, the summary, the satellite image, and then I stopped. My hand froze over a document sitting near the bottom of the pile. It was stapled in the top left corner. It was printed on slightly heavier stock than the draft paper I used. I picked it up. It was a chain of custody transfer form. Form DD-2549. It was filled out. It had dates. It had signatures. But they were not my signatures. And more importantly, I had not brought this form with me. I keep my chain of custody forms digital. I never, ever print them unless I'm handing physical evidence to a court officer. There was zero reason for this document to be in my bag. There was zero reason for it to be in this house. I read the text on the page. It authorized the transfer of classified packet Delta 9 to a recipient listed only as Asset 4. The date on the form was today. The timestamp was 2 hours ago. "Where did you get this?" I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. "Get what?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "We found it all on your desk. We just took the pile." "No," I said, looking up at them. The room seemed to tilt. "I did not bring this. This form does not exist in my physical files. Where did you get this?" "I told you," Brent snapped. "It was on the desk. Maybe you forgot you had it. You are obviously stressed out enough to forget things." "I do not forget chain of custody forms," I said. I looked at the staple. It was a copper staple. I use standard steel staples. The government supplies steel staples. This document had been stapled with a copper staple. Someone had not just looked at my files. Someone had added to them, or someone had replaced them. I looked at the stack again. The mess I had found on my desk was not just clumsy snooping. It was a shuffle, a sleight of hand. "Who else has been in this house?" I asked. I looked at my father. "Dad, who else has been here?" "Nobody," Ray said. But he looked away. He picked up his drink and took a long, nervous sip. "Just us. Just family." "This paper," I held it up, shaking it at them. "This paper did not come from my bag. It came from somewhere else. If you do not tell me right now where this came from, I cannot help you when they come." "When who comes?" Danielle asked, crossing her arms. "The imaginary police?" "They are not imaginary," I said. "And they are not police." I looked down at the document again. At the bottom, in small print, was a routing code. I recognized the syntax. It was not NSLD syntax. It was darker. It was the syntax used by private contractors who handled off-book renditions. And then the realization hit me like a physical blow. The printer downstairs. The one I heard running. They hadn't just scanned my files to send them out. They had received a file. The printer had received a print job from an external source. And someone, one of the people standing in this room, had gone to the printer, retrieved this document, and slipped it into my pile to make it look like it belonged to me. They were not just curious. They were active participants in a transfer. "You didn't just take these," I said, backing away from the table. "You traded them." My father stood up. "Violet, that is enough." "What did you do, Dad?" I asked. But before he could answer, before Brent could make another joke. The air in the room changed again. It wasn't the air of a domestic argument anymore. It was the static charge of an imminent strike. I looked at the window. The sheer curtains were drawn, but through the fabric, I saw lights, not the soft yellow of streetlights, harsh, blue strobe lights, silent, pulsing. They were washing over the front lawn, turning the manicured grass into a pale, alien landscape. "Violet?" my mother whispered. "What is that light?" I did not answer. I looked at the paper in my hand. The copper staple glinted in the lamplight. "It is too late," I said. The doorbell did not ring. There was no knock. There was only the sound of heavy tires crunching on gravel, and the distinct, terrifying sound of a battering ram being adjusted against a doorframe. My hand did not shake. That was the first thing I noticed. In the silence of the living room, surrounded by the people who shared my DNA. My body had successfully divorced itself from my emotions. The Violet, who worried about buying the right anniversary gift or making sure her blazer wasn't too wrinkled, was gone. She had been replaced by Agent Garcia, a biological machine calibrated for crisis management. I reached into my pocket and retrieved my secure communicator. It is not a phone you can buy at a mall kiosk. It is a blocky, utilitarian device with no camera and no apps. I unlocked it with a thumbprint and a 6-digit PIN. I did not dial 911. 911 brings local police who ask questions and trample crime scenes. I dialed a pre-programmed sequence, *77, followed by my badge number. "Violet, put that away," my mother said. Her voice wavered between anger and fear. "You are ruining the night. Who are you calling? The police? You are going to call the police on your own father?" I did not answer her. The line clicked open. There was no operator asking what my emergency was. There was only a tone, a high-pitched, digital handshake. I pressed the volume button 3 times. Up, down, up. That was the signal. Code black. Site compromised. Asset exposed. Immediate extraction required. I placed the device on the coffee table. Screen down. It was now a homing beacon. "I am not calling the police," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It was flat, monotone. It lacked the rising inflection of a daughter pleading to be understood. "I am logging a security event. It is already done." "You are unbelievable," Danielle scoffed. She walked over to the window and peered through the curtains at the flashing blue lights that were washing over the lawn. "You actually called the cops because we looked at your papers. You are so petty. Violet, you are trying to humiliate us." "Those are not police lights," I said calmly. "Police lights in Maryland are red and blue. Those lights are solid blue. That is federal." "Federal?" Brent repeated. He laughed. A nervous, hacking sound. "Okay, sure. The FBI is here for Mom's anniversary. You really commit to the bit, don't you?" He looked down at the coffee table where the classified documents were still scattered. His eyes lingered on the satellite photo he had tried to photograph earlier. His hand twitched. "Don't," I said. "I am just going to put it back in your bag," Brent said, reaching for it. "Since you are being such a psychopath about it." "Do not touch it," I ordered. "Everything on that table is now evidence. If you touch it, you are tampering with a federal crime scene." "I am keeping it," Brent said, defiance flaring in his eyes. He snatched the paper up. "I am keeping it as a souvenir, a reminder of the night my sister lost her mind. I am not posting it. I am just putting it in my pocket." "Brent, put it down," I said. "Make me," he sneered. He folded the paper, creasing a top-secret satellite image of a critical infrastructure node, and shoved it into the breast pocket of his blazer. "There, gone." "Are you going to tackle me?" I calculated the distance between us. 6 feet. I could immobilize him. I knew the pressure points. I could dislocate his shoulder and retrieve the document in under 4 seconds. But I did not move. Physical engagement with a civilian, especially a family member, would complicate the report. The team was already outside. They would handle the retrieval. "You have just committed a felony under Title 18 of the United States Code," I said. "Possession of national defense information, unauthorized removal and retention." "Oh, stop it!" my mother cried out. She stepped between us, her hands raised. "Stop quoting laws. We are your family. Violet, please, I just wanted to see. I just wanted to feel close to you. Why do you have to make everything so cold?" "Closeness does not authorize access." "Linda," I said. I did not call her Mom. The word felt wrong in my mouth. "You violated the boundaries I set. You ignored the locks. You ignored the warnings." "I gave birth to you," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I have a right to know who you are. I have a right to know what you do." "No," I said. "You don't. That is the point of the clearance. You do not have the right." "This is ridiculous," Danielle interrupted. She turned away from the window. You are trying to turn a family squabble into a raid. You want us to be scared of you. Well, I am not scared. I save lives every day. Violet, real lives. People bleeding out on gurneys. You shuffle papers and play pretend soldier. You are not scary. You are just sad. This is not about me, I said. It stopped being about me the moment you scanned that file. The room went quiet again. The mention of the scan hung in the air. I turned my gaze to my father. Ray. He was standing by the fireplace, gripping the mantle with one hand. He looked gray. He had not said a word since I mentioned the copper staple. In his other hand, held tightly against his thigh, was a manila envelope. It was thick. I narrowed my eyes. My visual cortex processed the details. The envelope was sealed, but the flap was slightly buckled, as if it had been stuffed in haste, and sticking out of the corner, just a fraction of an inch, was a piece of white paper. It was not the creamy, high-quality bond paper my agency used. It was bright white, standard consumer copy paper, the kind you buy at Office Depot, the kind that was currently sitting in the tray of the printer downstairs. Dad, I said. He flinched. What is in the envelope? Nothing, he said quickly, too quickly. Just bills, some mail I need to sort. You are holding bills at your anniversary party? I asked. In the middle of an argument with your daughter? I was just holding it, he stammered. Nervous habit. I took a step toward him. Let me see it. No, he said, stepping back. It is private, financial stuff. Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I know what a printout looks like. I know you scanned the documents. I heard the machine. I know you printed copies. I didn't, he lied. He looked at my mother, pleading for backup. Linda, tell her. I didn't do anything. Ray? My mother asked, looking at him with confusion. What is she talking about? I kept my eyes locked on him. You scanned the topological map, you scanned the threat assessment, and you printed them out. Why? He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. I wanted a copy. Like Brent said, a keepsake, to show the guys at the club. Look what my daughter does. You are lying, I said. You do not show the guys at the club top-secret logistical data. And you definitely do not receive files from them. I pointed to the copper-stapled document on the table. That document, I said. The one with the routing code for a private mercenary contractor. That came from you. You put it there. You were swapping them out. I don't know what you are talking about, he whispered. But he was shaking now, visibly shaking. Who is Asset 4? I asked. Stop it, Violet, Danielle yelled. Leave him alone. He is your father. Who is Asset 4? I shouted. It was the first time I had raised my voice in 10 minutes. The force of it made Ray stumble back against the fireplace screen. He said it would help, Ray blurted out. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the flashing blue lights outside seemed to pause. Who? I asked. Who said it would help? Ray slumped. He looked old, defeated. He clutched the envelope to his chest like a shield. A guy, he whispered. A friend. I met him a few months ago. He helps people with debt. You know things have been tight since the retirement fund tanked. Violet, you never asked. You never visit. You didn't know. Debt, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. You sold me out for debt relief? No, it wasn't like that. Ray pleaded. He said he could restructure the loans. He just needed proof. Proof that I was a reliable contact. Proof that I had access to high-level people. He said if I could just show him just a sample of what you work on, he could get me a preferred rate. He called it verification of influence. Verification of influence, I said. The term was tradecraft. It was intelligence speak for compromising a target. My father had been groomed. He had been targeted, assessed, and recruited as a cutout without even realizing it. He sent me that file, Ray continued, tears welling in his eyes. He said I should print it out and put it with your stuff. He said it was just a test, to see if you would notice. He said if you noticed, it meant you were good. It was a game, Violet, just a game. And the envelope? I asked. What is in the envelope? Ray looked down at the manila packet. The scans. He told me to scan your papers and bring them to him tomorrow, to prove I did it, to prove I could touch your work. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. My father was not just a curious parent. He was an active mule for an unknown hostile entity. He had digitized classified intelligence and prepared it for exfiltration. You scanned them, I said, my voice hollow. Which means they are on the hard drive of the printer, which means they are on the home network. I didn't send them, Ray insisted. I just printed them. The printer has an auto-forward rule. Dad, I said. I saw the log. It emailed them. As soon as you scanned them. They went to him. Ray's face went white. No. He said, bring the hard copies. He lied, I said. He wanted the digital copy immediately. The hard copies were just to make you feel involved. You gave him everything 10 minutes ago. Oh my God, my mother whispered. She covered her mouth with her hands. Ray, what have you done? I was trying to save the house, Ray yelled, his voice cracking. I was trying to save everything. You just lost everything, I said. I looked at the clock on the mantel. 12 minutes had passed since the first scan. The data was out. The enemy, whoever Asset 4 was, had the packet. They knew the vulnerabilities of the Northeast Corridor, they knew the response protocols, and they knew my name. It is over, I said to the room. The breach is total. So what happens now? Brent asked. He sounded small. The bravado was gone. We say sorry? We delete the email? No, I said. Now we survive the consequences. I walked over to the window. The blue lights were pulsing faster now, but underneath the silence of the lights, I heard something else. It started as a low rumble, vibrating through the floorboards, shaking the crystal glasses in the china cabinet. It grew louder, a deep, mechanical roar. Then, the sound of tires. Not one car, many. What is that? Danielle asked, stepping back from the window. That is the response team, I said. A screech tore through the night air. The sound of heavy duty. Run-flat tires locking up on asphalt. It was followed by another, and another. The driveway was being swarmed. Doors slammed. Heavy. Metal doors. The sound of boots hitting the pavement. Dozens of boots. Echoed like gunfire. Violet, my mother said, her voice trembling. Why are there so many? Because, I said, turning to face them. You didn't just leak a file. You compromised the national security of the United States. And now, the United States is here to take it back. I looked at my father. He was still clutching the envelope. Put the envelope on the floor. Dad, I said softly, and put your hands on your head. Do it now, before they come in. Violet, please, he begged. I can't help you, I said. I am not your daughter anymore. Tonight, I am just the witness. From the front porch, a voice boomed, amplified by a megaphone, shattering the last illusion of suburbia. This is the Department of Homeland Security. Occupants of the residence, remain where you are. We are breaching. The front door shook. The wood groaned under the weight of the ram. I closed my eyes and waited for the splintering sound of my life falling apart. The front door did not open. It disintegrated. There is a specific sound that a kinetic breaching tool makes when it connects with a standard suburban deadbolt. It is a crunch followed by an explosion of wood and drywall. It is violent, final, and deafening. 1 second. The door was a barrier protecting my parents' anniversary party from the night. The next second, it was splinters flying across the foyer tile like shrapnel. The noise was physically painful. It sucked the air out of the room. My mother screamed, a high, piercing sound that cut through the mechanical violence. My father dropped the envelope he had been clutching. It hit the floor, spilling white pages onto the Persian rug. Federal agents, hands. Let me see your hands. The command did not come from one throat. It came from 6. It was a wall of sound, synchronized and overwhelming. Through the shattered doorway, men in heavy tactical gear poured into the hallway. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, checking corners. Their movements sharp and practiced. They were not wearing the friendly blue uniforms of the local police. They were wearing matte gray and black, with body armor that added 3 inches to their chests. The letters DHS were stenciled in yellow across their backs. Bright, blinding tactical lights mounted on the barrels of their rifles swept the room. The beams cut through the ambient lamplight, exposing dust motes and terror. "Center clear! Left clear! Contact front! Get down! Everybody down! Now!" I dropped to my knees instantly. I interlocked my fingers behind my head. It was muscle memory. I knew the drill. You do not argue with a breach team. You comply. You de-escalate. And you identify yourself only when the room is secure. My family did not know the drill. My father stood frozen, his hands half raised, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. "Get on the ground!" an operator screamed, advancing on him. I live here," Ray stammered. "This is my house." 2 agents grabbed him. They did not ask him nicely. One kicked his legs apart, and the other forced him down. Ray's knees hit the hardwood with a sickening thud. He grunted in pain, his face pressed against the floorboards. "Ray!" my mother shrieked. She tried to move toward him. "Don't you hurt him!" "Ma'am, get down!" An agent intercepted her, guiding her firmly but forcefully to the sofa. She collapsed onto the cushions, sobbing, clutching her chest. Brent was backed into the corner near the television. He looked small. He looked like a child. He held his hands up, shaking violently. "I didn't do anything," he yelled, his voice cracking. "I am in marketing. I am just a marketing guy." "On the floor. Face down." They forced him down. Brent complied, weeping openly. Danielle stood by the window. She was the only one besides me who wasn't screaming. She was staring at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of shock and pure, distilled hatred. "You," she mouthed. "You did this." "Secure that subject." An agent moved toward Danielle. She raised her hands slowly, her gaze never leaving mine. She knelt down, her movements stiff. I remained on my knees in the center of the living room, my eyes fixed on the floor. I waited for the call. "Room secure. 4 subjects detained. 1 asset identified." A tall man with a radio strapped to his chest walked into the circle of light. He wasn't holding a rifle. He was holding a sidearm at the low ready. He looked at me. I recognized the tactical patch on his shoulder. Rapid Response Team. District 3. "Agent Garcia?" he asked. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the shouting of a moment ago. "I am Agent Garcia," I said, keeping my hands locked behind my head. "Badge number 4992 Alpha. Code Black initiated at 2100 hours. "Clear," the man said. "Asset is secure. Stand up. Garcia." I stood up. My legs felt like lead. The room was a wreck, not because things were broken, but because the illusion of safety had been shattered. My father was zip-tied on the floor. My brother was sobbing into the carpet. My mother was hyperventilating on the couch. "What is the situation?" the team leader asked me. He didn't look at my family. To him, they were just potential threats or collateral damage. He looked only at me. "Data breach," I said. My voice was mechanical. I pointed to the coffee table. "Classified materials. Top secret/SCI were removed from secure containment. They were handled by uncleared civilians. They were photographed." I pointed to Brent, who was lying face down 5 feet away. "Subject 1, Brent Garcia. He has a photograph of the topological satellite scan on his personal device. It is in his breast pocket." The team leader gestured to an agent. "Bag it." The agent knelt on Brent's back. Brent yelped. The agent reached into his pocket and pulled out the phone. "Hey, that is mine," Brent cried out, his face mashed into the rug. I didn't send it. I swear. I was just joking. I was just going to keep it for fun. Bagged, the agent said, dropping the phone into a Faraday bag, a silver signal-blocking pouch that cut the device off from the cellular network instantly. He sealed it with a snap. Subject 2, Ray Garcia, I continued, pointing to my father. He admitted to scanning hard copies of the intelligence packet. I pointed to the spilled envelope on the floor. The scans are in the printer memory, I said. Downstairs study. The device is a multifunction wireless unit. It needs to be seized and isolated immediately. Team 2, secure the study, the leader barked into his headset. Disconnect and bag the printer. Do not power it down. We need the volatile memory intact. I heard heavy boots thundering down the basement stairs. Ray Garcia also admitted to receiving unauthorized materials from an external source, I said. I pointed to the document with the copper staple, still sitting on the coffee table where I had dropped it. That document is foreign to the packet. It was introduced into the secure environment by the subject. It contains a routing code for a private military contractor. The team leader looked at the paper. He didn't touch it. He pulled out a pair of latex gloves, snapped them on, and picked it up by the edge. He read the code. His eyes narrowed. Evidence, he said. He placed it into a plastic evidence bag held open by another agent. Violet, my mother screamed from the couch. Stop it. Stop talking to them like robots. Help your father. Tell them to let him up. I did not look at her. I could not look at her. If I looked at her, I would break. And if I broke, I couldn't manage the damage. Ma'am, remain silent, the team leader said, not unkindly, but with zero room for negotiation. She is my daughter, Linda wailed. She is doing this to us. She is a federal agent following protocol, the leader said. He turned back to me. Anyone else? Subject 3, Danielle Garcia, I said. Witness to the breach, no physical contact with the materials observed, but she was present during the exposure period. Danielle looked up from the floor. She wasn't crying. Her face was stone. You traitor, she hissed. The word hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. You filthy traitor. You brought stormtroopers into Mom's house. For what? For a piece of paper? It is not a piece of paper. Danny, I said softly. It is a felony. I don't care, she shouted. Look at Dad. Look at him. I looked. Ray was weeping silently, his cheek pressed against the floor, his wrists bound behind his back with plastic flex cuffs. He looked broken. He looked like an old man who had tried to play a game he didn't understand and had lost everything. I had no choice, I said. You always have a choice, Danielle spat. You chose the job. You chose them over us. Secure her, the team leader said. An agent helped Danielle up and moved her to a chair, zip-tying her wrists in front of her. It was a courtesy. They weren't treating her as a primary threat, just a detained witness, but the zip ties were real. Then, the radio on the team leader's chest crackled. Team lead, this is Tech, a voice said through the static. We have the printer. We are running a field dump on the logs. Go ahead, the leader said. Confirmed egress, the voice said. The device executed a scan-to-email function 17 minutes ago. 3 files. High resolution. The destination address is external. My heart sank. 17 minutes. That was an eternity in digital time. The files were gone. They were in the wild. Destination? The leader asked. It is a masked relay, the tech replied. But we are tracing the hops. It looks like a server in the Caymans. Wait, we have a partial handshake on the recipient. The team leader looked at me. 17 minutes. Garcia, you said the breach was recent. I reported it the second I confirmed it, I said. My father scanned them while I was out of the room. The leader walked over to Ray. He crouched down. He didn't yell. He spoke in a low, dangerous voice. Mr. Garcia, he said, listen to me very carefully. You just sent classified national defense information to a foreign server. That is espionage. That carries a sentence of 20 years to life. Do you understand me? Ray sobbed. I didn't know. I didn't know. Who did you send it to? The leader asked. I need a name, right now. If you give me a name, maybe you don't die in a federal prison. Tony, Ray blubbered. His name is Tony. Tony Ricci. He is just a guy. He helps with loans. Tony Ricci, the leader repeated. He looked at me. Does that name mean anything to you? Analyst? I shook my head. No, it is generic. It sounds like a mob alias. Where did you meet him? The leader pressed. At the club, Ray cried. The golf club. He was a guest. He said he knew people. He said he could fix the mortgage. Fix the mortgage, I repeated, feeling sick. By selling your daughter. He said it was a game, Ray insisted, squeezing his eyes shut. He said nobody would get hurt. Suddenly, the front door, or the hole where the door used to be, darkened. Another figure walked in. This man was not wearing tactical gear. He was wearing a suit. He had a badge clipped to his belt. I recognized him. Agent Miller, Internal Affairs. He walked through the debris of the doorframe. Stepping over the splinters, he surveyed the room. He looked at the crying mother, the zip-tied father, the terrified brother. Then he looked at me. Agent Garcia, Miller said. His voice was dry. Surrender your weapon and your badge. I am the reporting officer, I said. You are a suspect in a gross negligence investigation, Miller said. You brought top-secret materials into an unsecured environment. You left them unattended. And now, they are in the wind. Hand it over. I reached for my badge. My hand trembled slightly as I unclipped it from my belt. I handed it to him. He dropped it into a plastic bag. This is a nightmare, Danielle said from her chair. You are getting arrested too? You burned down the whole family and you are getting arrested too? I am not arrested, I said. I am under administrative review. Same thing, Miller said. The radio crackled again. Team lead. We have a hit on the recipient, the tech voice said. We bypassed the relay. The email didn't go to a bank. It went to a digital Dropbox associated with a known dossier. The team leader stood up. He walked over to Miller and whispered something in his ear. Miller's face went pale. He looked at Ray, then at me. Miller walked over to me. He took my arm. He led me away from the family, toward the ruined doorway, out of earshot of the sobbing. You need to know who your father just emailed, Miller said quietly. Who? I asked. Is it a fence? A broker? No, Miller said. It is not a broker. The email address is linked to the Red Syndicate. I felt the blood drain from my face. The Red Syndicate wasn't a loan shark operation. They were an extremist paramilitary group. They were the people who planted bombs on bridges. They were the exact people I wrote reports about. They were the people who killed analysts. My father knows a terrorist? I whispered. No, Miller said. Your father was targeted by a terrorist. They didn't want the mortgage. Garcia, they wanted you. They have been watching you. And they used your father's greed to get into your bag. I looked back at Ray. He was lying on the floor, weeping about money, completely unaware that he had just handed the blueprints for a mass casualty event to the people who would pull the trigger. The recipient is active, Miller said. The file was opened 3 minutes ago. They have the map, and based on the chatter we are picking up, they are moving. Moving where? I asked. Miller looked at me with cold, hard eyes. They are moving toward the coordinates on the map your father just sent them. Philadelphia, I breathed. We have to go, Miller said. Now, you are coming with us to the black site. We need you to decode the rest of that packet before the trains start crashing. What about my family? I asked, looking back one last time. Your family is being taken into custody, Miller said. They are material witnesses to an act of terror. Say goodbye, Agent Garcia. You won't be seeing them for a very long time. I watched as 2 agents pulled Ray to his feet. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Violet, he screamed. Fix this. You are the government. Fix this. I turned my back on him. I walked out the broken door, past the black SUVs, into the cold night air. I can't fix this, Dad, I whispered to the darkness. Nobody can. The silence that follows a federal raid is not empty. It is heavy. It presses against your eardrums with the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. It was 3 a.m. when I sat alone in a holding cell at the field office. I was not under arrest. Technically, I was being debriefed, but the door was locked from the outside, and the coffee they gave me tasted like battery acid and shame. I stared at the styrofoam cup, watching a single bubble pop on the surface, and thought about the front lawn of my parents' house. I knew what it looked like right now. The black SUVs were gone, the agents were gone, but the scar remained. There would be a sheet of plywood nailed over the hole where the front door used to be, a rough, ugly bandage on a perfect suburban face. The neighbors, the Johnsons, the Millers, the people who brought casseroles when my grandmother died, would be peeking through their blinds. They would not come over. In Maple Hollow, you bring food for a funeral, but you lock your doors for a federal investigation. My family had been released pending further inquiry. Their lawyers, expensive men in sharp suits hired by my father in a panic, had managed to get them out on bail, but they were not free. I checked my temporary phone, a burner device issued to me by the agency while my personal electronics were being scrubbed by forensics. It had been silent for hours. Then, the floodgates opened. The first message was from Brent. He must have borrowed a phone, or maybe he was using an old tablet he dug out of a closet that the feds missed. You killed it. The text read, "You killed everything." I did not reply. A second message followed immediately. Client just called. The big one. The tech firm in Austin. They saw the news. Local paper ran a story about the raid. They said they cannot have their brand associated with a person of interest in a national security probe. That was a $200,000 contract. Violet, gone. I am radioactive. Nobody hires a guy whose house gets stormed by Homeland Security. I stared at the screen. I could hear his voice in my head. Not the arrogant brother from the party, but the desperate, small voice of a man watching his ego disintegrate. He was right. In his world, perception was reality, and the perception of the Garcia family was now tainted with the stench of treason. Then came the text from Danielle. It was not a text. Actually, it was a voicemail. I held the phone to my ear. "I hope you are happy," her voice said. She sounded exhausted, stripped of her usual doctorly authority. I just spent 4 hours explaining to the hospital board why I was detained. I save lives. Violet, I pull people back from the brink of death. I fix the bodies that the world breaks. And you? You broke us. You looked at Dad. Our dad. Who taught you how to ride a bike? And you treated him like a terrorist. I do not know who you are anymore. Do not come to Christmas. Do not come to anything. The line clicked dead. I put the phone down on the metal table. My chest felt hollowed out, as if someone had reached inside and scooped out my heart with a melon baller. They did not understand. They would never understand. To them, I was the villain who pushed the button. They could not see the train rushing toward the cliff. They only saw me pulling the emergency brake that threw them all to the floor. Then, the final message arrived. It was from my mother. It was a long block of text, rambling and punctuated with typos, likely typed through tears. I am sitting in the kitchen. The door is broken. It is cold. Your father is in the bedroom staring at the wall. He will not speak. How could you? Violet, I am your mother. I have a right to know your life. I have a right to know what burdens you carry. You punished us for loving you. You used your laws and your badges to hurt the people who made you. I hope your secrets keep you warm at night, because this house is freezing. I closed my eyes. I have a right to know. That was the refrain, the civilian mantra, the belief that love entitles you to access. They did not understand that in my world. Love is a liability. Love is the crack in the armor that the enemy pries open with a crowbar. The lock on the interrogation room door clicked. I sat up straight, smoothing the wrinkles in my blazer, I wiped my face with my hands, erasing the fatigue. I was not Violet Garcia, the bad daughter. I was Agent Garcia, the subject of an internal inquiry. 2 men walked in. I knew them both. One was Assistant Director Holloway, my direct superior. The other was Agent Miller from Internal Affairs. Holloway looked tired. Miller looked like a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. They sat down opposite me. Miller placed a thick file on the table. "Agent Garcia," Miller began, his voice devoid of inflection. "Let us review the timeline." "I have already given my statement," I said. "I received a packet. I was ordered to process it remotely. I secured the environment to the best of my ability. My perimeter was breached by family members using a master key. I initiated the containment protocol immediately." "To the best of your ability," Miller repeated, mocking the phrase. "You took a top-secret/sensitive compartmented information laptop into a civilian residence during a party. You left physical hard copies on a desk secured only by a bedroom privacy lock. That is not negligence, Garcia. That is malpractice. I was under direct orders to process the threat immediately," I said, looking at Holloway. "Sir, you told me the timeline was critical. You authorized the remote burst." Holloway nodded slowly. "I did, but I did not authorize you to leave the room. I did not authorize you to let your father turn your workspace into a copy center. I left the room for 6 minutes to get water," I said. "I locked the door. And in those 6 minutes," Miller interrupted, "national defense information was exfiltrated to a hostile actor. You failed, Garcia. You failed to protect the asset. You failed to protect the data. And you failed to assess the human terrain. You should have known your father was compromised." I looked down at my hands. "I didn't know." "He is in debt," Miller said, flipping open the file. "Deep debt, gambling, speculative real estate. He has been underwater for 18 months. Did you not run a background check on your own host environment?" "He is my father," I whispered. "I didn't think I had to." "That is why you are dangerous," Miller said. "You have a blind spot." He leaned back in his chair. The room was silent for a long moment. I braced myself. This was it. This was the part where they asked for my badge permanently. This was the part where I was suspended, stripped of my clearance, and escorted out of the building to sell insurance for the rest of my life. But Holloway did not ask for my badge. He leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. He looked at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Violet," he said, "we scrutinized the packet that was sent from your father's printer." "I know," I said. "The topological map? The threat assessment?" "Yes," Holloway said. "Holloway. Those were sent, but there was something else. The third item. The document with the copper staple. The chain of custody form," I said. "My father planted it. He admitted it. He said his contact, this Tonio, gave it to him to mix in with my papers, to prove he had access." Holloway exchanged a look with Miller. It was a look of heavy significance. "We analyzed the document," Holloway said. "It is not a fake. It is a genuine Department of Defense transfer order. It authorizes the movement of a high-value asset. But here is the thing. Garcia, that document was never in your possession. You did not check it out. You did not print it. It was not in your briefcase." "I know," I said. "I told you. My father brought it in." "Think, Violet," Holloway said, his voice dropping. "How did it get into your room? Your father said he put it with your papers to test you, but he also said he scanned it with your papers. That means it had to be physically present in the stack before the breach occurred." I frowned. "He must have slipped it in when I wasn't looking. Maybe when I went to the bathroom." "You said the door was locked," Miller pointed out, "and you said you checked the bag before you started working. You are meticulous, Garcia. If someone had entered your room and rifled through your bag before you started working, you would have noticed the displacement. You would have seen the zippers were wrong." I replayed the evening in my head, the drive, the arrival, the noise. "I checked the bag," I said. "It was sealed." "So when did he put it in?" Holloway asked. If the bag was sealed when you entered the room, and you were in the room the entire time until you went for water, when did Ray Garcia insert the document? My mind raced backward. I saw the driveway. I saw my car. I saw myself getting out. You look tired. My mother had said, "Put that heavy bag down." I saw myself walking to the trunk. I saw my father coming out of the house. He was smiling. He was wearing his proud dad face. "Here, let me help you with that," he had said. I froze. "The driveway," I whispered. Holloway nodded. "Go on." "When I arrived," I said, the memory crystallizing with sickening clarity. My father met me at the car. He grabbed the bag. He insisted on carrying it to the porch. He held it for maybe 30 seconds while I hugged my mother. 30 seconds, Miller said. Plenty of time to slide a single sheet of paper into an unzipped outer pocket, or to slip it between the flap and the body of the bag. He didn't just capitalize on a mistake, I said, feeling the blood drain from my face. He planned it. He was waiting for me. He was instructed, Holloway corrected. The contact, Asset 4, knew you were coming. He knew you would have the bag. He coached your father on exactly how to insert the document. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. Violet, it was a targeted injection operation. Your father was the delivery system. I felt sick, physically sick. My father, the man who taught me to fish, had turned me into a courier for a terrorist cell without me even knowing it. He hadn't just looked at my files. He had used me to validate a transfer order for something else entirely. What does the document authorize? I asked. What is Asset 4 trying to move? That is why you are not fired yet, Holloway said. Because you are the only one who has seen the full context. The document authorizes the transport of a specific hazardous material container from a holding facility in New Jersey to a disposal site in Pennsylvania. New Jersey, I said. The rail yard, the satellite photo Brent tried to take. Exactly, Holloway said. The map your father scanned was the route. The document he planted was the authorization. They used your credentials, by proxy of your father's scan, to authenticate a fake transfer order. They tricked the system into thinking the movement was authorized by NSLD. They are stealing something, I realized. They aren't bombing the train. They are robbing it. They are stealing a radiological isotope, Miller said, his voice grim. Cobalt-60, enough to make a dirty bomb that could render Midtown Manhattan uninhabitable for 50 years. The room seemed to shrink. Cobalt-60. And the email? I asked. You said it triggered a manhunt. The email confirmed the route, Holloway said. As soon as your father hit send, the team on the ground started moving. We are tracking a truck that left the New Jersey yard 40 minutes ago. It is moving under a falsified NSLD manifest, the one your father helped create. Where is it going? It is heading toward the coordinates listed on your topological map, Holloway said. It is heading for the interchange. He stood up. You are not going to a cell. Garcia, Holloway said. You are coming to the command center. You know the grid better than anyone. You know the choke points. If we are going to stop that truck before it reaches the city, we need your brain. And my family? I asked. Holloway paused at the door. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. Your father just facilitated the theft of a nuclear material, he said. If that truck isn't stopped, felony is going to be the least of his problems. He will be looking at treason charges with the death penalty on the table. I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. I pushed the image of my mother crying in the kitchen out of my mind. I pushed the sound of Danielle's voice out of my head. Let's go, I said. We walked out of the interrogation room and into the bustling chaos of the operations floor. Giant screens covered the far wall. One of them showed a map of the I-95 corridor. A single red dot was pulsing, moving steadily south. Target is active, a technician shouted. Speed is 70 miles per hour. They are not stopping. I looked at the red dot. It was moving fast, and it was moving away from safety, straight into the heart of the darkness I had spent my entire life trying to keep at bay. My father had turned the key. Now, I had to stop the engine. I sat in the partitioned glass cube of the cyber response unit, a sterile fishbowl in the center of the frantic operations floor. My badge was gone, sitting in an evidence bag 3 rooms away, but my fingers were still authorized to touch the keyboard. Holloway had granted me a provisional clearance, a gray status, which meant I was useful enough to work the problem, but suspect enough to have an armed guard standing 3 feet behind my chair. My task was officially labeled Containment and Impact Assessment. In plain English, I was the janitor. I had to sweep up the digital mess my family had made and figure out exactly where the shards of glass had landed. On the screen in front of me was the raw data dump from my father's printer. It was a digital autopsy of betrayal. I looked at the timestamp of the outgoing email. It had left the house at exactly 8:43 in the evening. I began to trace the packet. The email had not gone to a standard inbox. It had been routed through a temporary relay service, a burner server, hosted in a jurisdiction that did not play nice with American subpoenas. The recipient address was a string of nonsense characters, alphanumeric gibberish designed to look like a system error, but to an analyst, even gibberish has a dialect. I ran a heuristic analysis on the email header. I was looking for the handshake, the digital acknowledgement sent back by the receiving server when the file was opened. The return signal came from a device operating on Eastern Standard Time. The user had opened the file, saved it, and then immediately purged the inbox. It was disciplined. It was professional. But they had made a mistake. The user had a habit. In the metadata of the acknowledgement, there was a faint trace of a specific keyboard layout setting. Dvorak, a layout used by coders, old-school hackers, and people who obsess over efficiency. It was a small detail, a crumb, but it gave me a scent. I pulled up the interview transcripts from the holding cells. My family was being questioned in separate rooms down the hall. I could not speak to them, but I could read what they were saying. The text scrolled across my secondary monitor. I started with Brent. My brother was crumbling. The transcript showed he was oscillating between arrogance and hyperventilation, but one section caught my eye. The interrogator had asked him about his finances. Subject: Brent Garcia. Statement: Look, I didn't need the money, okay? My firm is doing great. I just landed a whale, a huge client, tech startup. They paid a $50,000 retainer up front, cash wire. Interrogator: What is the name of the client? Statement: Zenith Global. They reached out 2 weeks ago. Said they liked my vision. They wanted a full rebrand. Interrogator: How did they find you? Statement: My dad. Dad introduced them. He said he met their rep at the club. Said the guy was looking for a fresh agency. I stopped reading. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. My father, Ray Garcia, did not know anyone at Zenith Global. My father's idea of networking was chatting with the guy who repaired his lawnmower. I cross-referenced the company name. Zenith Global did not exist. It was a shell, registered in Delaware 3 weeks ago. The $50,000 wired to Brent wasn't a retainer. It was a bribe, but it was a clever bribe. They hadn't handed my father a bag of cash, which would have been suspicious. They had funneled money to his son, the son he was desperately proud of, creating a legitimate-looking business transaction. They had bought Ray's loyalty by stroking his ego and saving his son's business. I switched to Danielle's transcript. Subject: Danielle Garcia. Statement: I didn't know about the debt. I swear. Mom handles the books. Dad just says everything is fine. But looking back, he has been weird. He sold the boat last month. He said he just didn't use it anymore. I pulled up Linda's file. My mother. Subject: Linda Garcia. Statement: Crying. I tried to keep it quiet. Ray made some bad calls. Crypto. Options. He lost the retirement fund 6 months ago. We were going to lose the house. Violet. This Tony, he told Ray he could pause the foreclosure. He said he had pull with the bank. I pieced it together. The picture that formed was not one of a clumsy family accident. It was a masterclass in human intelligence asset recruitment. The predator, Tony, Asset 4, whoever he was, had done a complete workup on the Garcia family. He knew Ray was drowning in debt. He knew Linda was desperate to maintain appearances. He knew Brent was hungry for validation. And he knew Danielle was too busy saving lives to notice the rot in the living room. He had squeezed them from all sides. He gave Ray a lifeline for the house. He gave Brent a dream client. And in return, all he asked for was a little verification. Just show me she is real. He must have said, just prove your daughter has the access you claim she has. I went back to the data. I needed to know about the blackmail. I flagged a section of Ray's second interview. The agents had pressed him on the game aspect. Interrogator: why did you scan the files? Ray? Why not just show them? Statement: he made me. He sent me a text right before Violet arrived. He said if I didn't get a digital copy, the deal was off. He said he would send the foreclosure notice to the local paper. He said everyone in town would know I was broke. It wasn't just greed. It was fear. Weaponized social shame. I looked at the document with the copper staple again, the one Ray had planted in my bag. The chain of custody form. Holloway had said it was a genuine Department of Defense authorization. But why did they need my father to plant it? Why couldn't they just forge it? Then it hit me. The system, the automated logistics network that tracks hazardous materials, does not trust external inputs. It only trusts inputs that originate from a verified, secure node. By scanning the document on my father's printer at the same time, he scanned my legitimate top-secret maps. He had tricked the algorithm. The system saw a stream of data that included valid NSLD intelligence. It assumed the entire packet was valid. It washed the fake transfer order by mixing it with real classified data. My father hadn't just leaked a file. He had been used as a human authentication token. "Agent Garcia," a voice said behind me. It was Holloway. "You have been staring at that screen for 10 minutes. Do you have a location?" "I have a profile," I said, not turning around. "The recipient isn't a loan shark. He is a ghost. But I found the connection." I typed a command. I pulled up a dormant file from 2 years ago. It was a threat assessment on a freelancer known as the Architect. "Look at the syntax," I said, pointing to the screen, the Dvorak layout, the routing through the Cayman relay, and look at the target selection. The Architect specializes in infrastructure disruption. He doesn't destroy targets. He redirects them. He causes chaos to cover theft. Holloway leaned in. "You think Asset 4 is the Architect?" "I think Asset 4 is a middleman working for him," I said. "And I know what they are doing. This entire operation, the family, the house, the scanning, it is a smokescreen." "Explain," Holloway commanded. "Think about the noise, sir," I said. "They made my father clumsy. They made him scan files on a home printer that screams its location to any monitoring agency. They made Brent take a photo. They wanted us to raid the house." "Why would they want to raid?" "To pull the eyes away from the rail line," I said. "While we were kicking down my parents' door, while we were jamming cell signals in Maple Hollow, the truck carrying the Cobalt 60 slipped through the checkpoint. They used your family as a flare," Holloway said, his face hardening. "To blind the sensors." "Yes," I said. "And it worked. We are 3 hours behind," I typed furiously. "But the Architect has a weakness. He likes to watch. He needs to verify the handoff personally. If the truck is heading to the coordinates on my map, the rail yard in Philadelphia, he will be there, or he will be at a vantage point nearby." I brought up the surveillance feed of the Philadelphia Transit Hub. It was a sprawling complex of tracks, platforms, and freight depots. It was chaos. Thousands of people. Hundreds of trains. "Filter for anomalies," I muttered to myself. "Look for the stillness." I scanned the crowd density algorithms. The computer highlighted areas of high congestion in red and low congestion in blue. I was looking for a dead zone, a place where someone could stand and watch the freight line without being seen. There, on the north side of the station, overlooking the freight switch, was an old signal tower. It was decommissioned. It should be empty. but the thermal sensor on the perimeter fence showed a heat bloom. Small, stationary, human. "I have him," I said. "Signal Tower 4, North Quadrant. He is waiting for the truck." Holloway grabbed his radio. "Strike teams, redirect to Philadelphia Sector 4. Possible hostile on the high ground." "Wait," I said. "The email." I looked at the header one last time. There was a final line of code I had missed. It was a forwarding command. The recipient hadn't just opened the file. He had forwarded it to a mobile device. I traced the signal of that mobile device. It wasn't at the signal tower. The signal tower was a decoy too. "Abort," I said. "Sir, abort the tower." "What?" Holloway snapped. "The heat signature in the tower is a loop," I said. "It is a thermal emitter, a heater on a timer. The architect isn't watching from the tower. He is on the move." I tracked the mobile signal. It was moving fast. It wasn't in a car. The velocity was too consistent. It was accelerating. "He is on a train," I said. My stomach dropped. "He didn't want the truck to go to the yard to unload," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "He wanted the truck to meet the train. He is not stealing the cobalt to build a bomb in a basement. He is loading it onto a passenger line." "Why?" Holloway asked. "Because a passenger train is the perfect delivery system," I said. "It bypasses the road checkpoints. It goes straight into the heart of Washington, D.C. I looked at the map. The signal was pinging from a train that had just departed the station. It was the Acela Express, southbound. "He is on the 1105, I said. "And if my father's manifest worked, that train is pulling a maintenance car that doesn't belong there." Holloway stared at the map. The red line of the train was inching toward the city. "Get me the manifest for that train." Holloway shouted to the floor. "Check for attached freight." "Sir," a tech called out. "Confirmed. The 1105 has a trailing car listed as emergency generator transport. Authorization code matches the document Garcia found." The room went silent. My father had not just helped them steal a box. He had helped them hitch a dirty bomb to a train carrying 400 civilians. "We can't derail it," Holloway said. "Not in a dense urban area. If that cobalt breaches, we lose the city." "We have to intercept it," I said. "We have to board it." "The train is doing 120 miles per hour, Holloway said. "We can't board it." "I know someone who can," I said. "But we need to get to the next station before it does." "The next station is Wilmington," Holloway said. 20 minutes away." "Then we have 19 minutes, I said. I stood up. "Sir, I request permission to join the field team." "You are an analyst, Garcia," Holloway said. "You are under investigation." "I know the loadout," I said. "I know the containment protocols for Cobalt-60, and I know the man sitting on that train. I have been studying the architect for 3 years. If you send a SWAT team in blind, he will detonate. He needs to see a face he doesn't expect." "And whose face is that?" "The face of the woman whose life he just ruined," I said. Holloway looked at me. He saw the cold resolve in my eyes. He saw that the daughter who cried over her mother's text messages was dead, and only the weapon remained. "Go," he said. "Get to the chopper." I ran toward the roof access. As I pushed through the doors, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the internal network. "New intelligence alert. Suspect identified." I looked at the screen. The facial recognition software had finally scrubbed the grain from the surveillance footage at the train station entrance. It showed a man in a gray coat, carrying a briefcase, stepping onto the platform. He turned his head slightly toward the camera. I stopped running. I knew that face. I didn't know him as the architect. I didn't know him as Tony. I knew him as Uncle Marcus. He wasn't my uncle by blood. He was my father's best friend from college. The man who came to Thanksgiving. The man who gave me my first savings bond. The man who had sat at our dinner table 2 months ago and listened to my father complain about his debts. He wasn't a stranger preying on a random family. He was a sleeper agent who had been embedded in our lives for 30 years, waiting for the moment when Ray Garcia's desperation would outweigh his loyalty. He hadn't just recruited my father. He had cultivated him. He had watered the seeds of my father's weakness for decades, just for this harvest. I stared at the image of the man who used to push me on the tire swing. Cliffhanger, I whispered to myself. I sprinted to the helicopter. The rotors were already spinning, cutting the air with a violence that matched the storm inside my chest. The operational lull while the facial recognition software processed the surveillance footage from the train station lasted exactly 45 minutes. In the movies, this is a montage of typing and drinking coffee. In reality, it was a window of time used by the Department of Justice to ensure that their case against the Garcia family was watertight before we initiated a kinetic engagement in a civilian zone. I was escorted into Conference Room B. It was a glass-walled box that smelled of lemon cleaner and stale fear. My family was there. They were no longer in handcuffs, but they looked more imprisoned than ever. My father, Ray, was slumped in a chair, staring at the table. My mother, Linda, was dabbing her eyes with a shredded tissue. Danielle was pacing, her arms crossed so tightly against her chest I thought she might crack a rib. And Brent was shaking his leg, a nervous tic that vibrated the entire table. Sitting at the head of the table was a man I did not know. He was wearing a $3,000 suit and a weary expression. This was Mr. Sterling, the criminal defense attorney my father had retained 5 minutes after his phone call was granted. Sterling looked up as I entered. He did not smile. He looked at me like I was a hostile witness, which, technically, I was. "Agent Garcia," Sterling said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Thank you for joining us." "I was just explaining the exposure to your family." I remained standing. Agent Miller stood by the door, a silent sentinel. "Exposure," Brent scoffed. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "That is a nice word for it, Violet. Tell this guy he is crazy. He is talking about prison time, real time, for a picture I didn't even post." "Mr. Garcia," Sterling interrupted, holding up a hand. "Please, I need you to understand the gravity of the statutes we are discussing. We are looking at Title 18, United States Code, Section 793, gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information." Sterling turned to Ray and Linda. "Now, for the parents," he said, consulting his notes. "If we can prove that you were coerced, that this Asset 4 manipulated you under duress due to your financial debts, we might be able to plead this down to gross negligence and conspiracy to defraud. If you cooperate fully, we might avoid a custodial sentence. You would lose the house, the pension, and you would be on probation for the rest of your lives, but you would likely stay out of a federal penitentiary." Ray let out a small, pathetic sound. "Lose the house?" "The house is a crime scene." "Ray," I said. It was the first time I had spoken. "It is gone. But for you, Brent," Sterling continued, his voice hardening, "the situation is more complex. You took a photograph of a top-secret document with a personal device. You did this after being explicitly warned by a federal agent not to do so. That implies intent. That implies willfulness." "I was joking," Brent shouted. He slammed his hand on the table. "I was just going to show the guys. I didn't send it to China. I didn't sell it. I just wanted a souvenir." "The Espionage Act does not have a souvenir exception," Sterling said coldly. "You digitized a classified satellite image. That image is now on your cloud backup. It has crossed state lines. It has potentially been indexed by third-party servers. The prosecution will argue that you recklessly disseminated national defense information. We are looking at 10 to 15 years. The room went silent. 15 years. Brent turned to me. His face was twisted in a rictus of panic and rage. "You have to stop this," he pleaded. "Violet, you have to tell them. Tell them I am not a spy. Tell them I am just your idiot brother. You can't let me go to prison for 15 years because of a joke." "It wasn't a joke, Brent," I said. I told you specifically. I said, if you take that picture, you go to prison. I gave you the warning. You chose to press the button." You should have explained it to me, Brent screamed. He stood up, knocking his chair back. You should have made me understand. You just stood there with your cold, superior attitude and barked orders. If you had just sat me down and said, Brent, this is really dangerous, I would have listened. But no, you had to be the agent. You had to be the tough guy. I did say it was dangerous, I replied, my voice steady. I said it was a felony. You didn't say it like a sister, Brent yelled. You said it like a cop. You are my sister. You are supposed to protect me. You are supposed to explain things so I don't ruin my life. I am not your teacher, Brent, I said. And you are 37 years old. You shouldn't need your little sister to explain why you shouldn't photograph a document marked top secret. You should have listened to the word no. You are enjoying this, Danielle cut in. Her voice was sharper than Brent's. It was surgical. You are loving this power trip. Look at you, standing there while our brother talks about losing a decade of his life. She walked over to me. She smelled like antiseptic and sweat. There is a way out of this, Danielle said, lowering her voice. Mr. Sterling said there is a way. If you testify that you gave Brent permission, if you say that you asked him to take the photo for a work-related reason, like a backup, then the intent charge drops. It becomes a procedural error. He gets a fine. You get a reprimand. I stared at her. You want me to lie? I want you to save your brother, Danielle said. It is a small lie. Just say you were tired. Say you asked him to snap a copy because the light was bad. Nobody gets hurt. It is just paperwork. It is perjury, I said, and it is conspiracy. If I say I authorized him to photograph that document, I become a co-conspirator in the mishandling of classified intelligence. I would lose my badge. I would lose my clearance. I would go to prison alongside him. So? Danielle asked. So you lose your job. You can get another job. You can be a consultant, but Brent can't get another life. You are willing to sacrifice your own brother to save your career? It is not about my career, Danielle, I said. It is about the law. I will not lie to a federal inquiry. I will not become a criminal to clean up your mess. You are heartless, Danielle spat. I save people. I bend the rules all the time to save patients. I forge insurance codes so poor kids can get surgery. Because I care about people more than forms. You? You care about the form more than the blood. I care about the millions of people who depend on that grid remaining secure, I said. The people you don't see. Violet, my mother spoke. She stood up from the table. She looked small, frail, a ghost of the woman who had hosted the party 3 hours ago. Violet, look at me. I looked at her. I gave birth to you, she said softly. I held you when you were sick. I paid for your college. I have loved you every day of your life. Do I not deserve to know? Do I not deserve to understand what you do? You can know that I love you, I said. You can know that I work hard. But you cannot know the secrets of the state. Mom, that is the line. I am your mother, she cried out, her voice cracking. I created you. Does that mean nothing? Do I not have a right to share in your life? Why do you shut me out? Because you are dangerous, I said. The words tasted like bile, but they had to be spoken. Because tonight proved that you cannot separate your love for me from your need to control me. You think that because you gave birth to me, you own me. You think you own my thoughts, my space, my work. I took a step closer to her. Giving birth to me does not mean you own everything I touch, I said. My oath is not to you, it is to the Constitution, and tonight, you forced me to choose between them. Then you made the wrong choice, my father said. Ray looked up. His eyes were dry. There was no sadness in them anymore, only a hard, desperate calculation. Mr. Sterling, Ray said, not looking at me. Do we have the papers? Sterling hesitated. Ray, I don't think this is the time. Give me the papers, Ray commanded. Sterling reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. It was a draft of a will. "Violet," Ray said, his voice shaking with a tremor of rage. "If you do not walk out of this room right now, if you do not go to those agents and tell them this was all a misunderstanding, if you do not fix this for Brent and for me, I am removing you from this family." "Ray," Linda gasped. "I mean it," Ray said. "I will disinherit you. I will write you out of the will. I will remove your name from the deed to the lake house. You will not be a Garcia anymore. You will be a stranger to us. No Christmases, no birthdays, nothing. You will be dead to us." I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had sold me out for a loan modification. I looked at the man who had planted a hazardous transport order in my bag to save his own skin. "You are threatening to cut me out of your will?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Ray said. "Unless you fix this." "Dad," I said, and I felt a tear finally slide down my cheek. "You have nothing left to leave me." Ray flinched as if I had slapped him. "The house is gone," I said. "The lake house will be seized to pay the fines. Your pension is liquidated. You are bankrupt. Dad, you have nothing but debt and shame. You are threatening to take away nothing." Ray's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The reality of his ruin hit him all at once. He wasn't the patriarch anymore. He was just a broke man in a plastic chair. Agent Miller stepped forward. "Agent Garcia, we need the signature." He placed a document on the table in front of me. It was a sworn affidavit, statement of fact regarding the breach of classified material on January 31st, 2026. It detailed everything. My father's planting of the document, Brent's photograph, my mother's negligence. Signing it was the final nail in their legal coffins. It was the document that would be used to prosecute them. "If you sign that," Danielle whispered, "you are an orphan." I looked at the pen. I looked at my family. They were looking at me with a mixture of hope and horror, waiting for me to blink, waiting for me to be the daughter they wanted, the one who would burn down the world to keep them warm. But I knew something they didn't. I knew a train was barreling toward Philadelphia with a dirty bomb attached to it, and I knew that unless I signed this paper confirming the validity of the leaked document, the tactical team could not get the authorization to intercept a civilian train. I picked up the pen. "I am sorry," I said. I signed my name. Violet Garcia. The ink was black. Permanent. "No!" Brent screamed. "You bitch! You traitor!" "That is enough," Agent Miller barked. "Escort the subjects to the holding cells." Agents swarmed the room. They pulled Brent up. He was kicking and screaming profanities at me. Danielle stood up with dignity, but her eyes were cold, dead things. Ray just sat there, weeping into his hands. Linda looked at me one last time, and then turned away, refusing to acknowledge my existence. They were dragged out. The door closed. The silence returned. I stood there, staring at my signature. My hand was shaking uncontrollably now. "You did the right thing," Agent Miller said softly. He picked up the affidavit. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did." "It feels like I just executed them," I whispered. "If you hadn't reported this," Miller said, leaning in close. "If you hadn't followed protocol exactly, we wouldn't have flagged the forwarding address. We wouldn't have known about the train. You didn't just report a crime. Garcia, you gave us the map." He tapped the file on the table. "Look at the casualty projections," he said. I looked down. Miller had opened the threat file Danielle had been looking at earlier, the one she had mocked. Projected impact. Cobalt, Shashias Deshimt dispersal. Estimated fatalities. Katuriolika, Tuxtanchu, immediate. Uninhabitable zone. 12 square miles. Danielle had seen the header before she left. I saw the look on her face as she was dragged out. It wasn't just hate anymore. It was fear. She had finally realized that the paperwork she despised was the only thing standing between her hospital and a nuclear wasteland. "The train is 20 minutes from the intercept point," Miller said. "Director Holloway is waiting on the roof. You have your warrant." I nodded. I wiped my face. I put the pen down. "I am ready," I said. I walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, my secure phone buzzed. It was a priority alert from Holloway. I pulled it out. Alert. Source compromised. I frowned. I tapped the message to open the details. Intercepted chatter confirms leak source. The Architect Network has identified the human asset who provided the original packet. My breath caught in my throat. The original packet, the intelligence that had sent me to my parents' house in the first place, had come from a deep cover source inside the Architect's Network. Asset ID, Griffin, status, burned, location, onboard train, 1105. I stared at the screen. Griffin, that was the code name. Miller, I said, turning back to him. The source, the guy who tipped us off about the network? He's on the train. What? Miller asked. He must have been shadowing the shipment, I said. He was trying to stop it himself. But the leak, my father's leak, it didn't just give the architect the route. It verified the timeline. They cross-referenced the access logs. I looked at the phone again. Subject is being hunted by hostiles on board. Uncle Marcus isn't just trying to move the bomb, I realized. He is cleaning house. He is going to execute the source before they reach Philadelphia. We need to get you on that chopper, Miller said, grabbing his radio. Now! I ran into the hallway. The family drama was over. The legal arguments were over. Now, there was only the rhythmic thumping of rotor blades and the knowledge that while I had lost my family in a conference room, someone else was about to lose their life in a train car because my father wanted a lower interest rate. The helicopter touched down on the tarmac of the forward operating base in a swirl of dust and kerosene fumes. We were not in Philadelphia yet. We were at a staging ground 10 miles south, a requisitioned industrial park that now served as the nerve center for the largest domestic terror intercept in a decade. I jumped out before the skids fully settled. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I did not blink. I ran toward the command tent, flanked by 2 Marines who looked at me not as a woman, but as a high-value asset that might explode. Inside the tent, the air was stagnant and smelled of ozone. Banks of monitors lined the canvas walls. Men and women in headsets were speaking in hushed, clipped tones. In the center of the room, a large digital map table glowed with the arteries of the Northeast Corridor rail system. Report, Holloway barked as he entered behind me. Train 1105 is passing Wilmington, a technician shouted. Speed is holding at 115 miles per hour. We have a visual from the overhead drone. No external signs of distress. No stoppage. And the package? I asked, stepping up to the table. Thermal imaging confirms a radiological signature in the trailing car, the tech replied. It is shielded, but the heat bleed is consistent with a Cobalt-60 containment unit. I stared at the red line crawling up the map. It was a serpent made of steel, carrying a poison pill into the heart of the frantic city. It was Friday night. The station would be packed with commuters, tourists, and families, 14,000 people. We have a problem, the tech continued. The train just went dark on the civilian transponder. The driver isn't responding to radio checks. Hijacked? Holloway asked. Or coerced, I said. The architect, my Uncle Marcus, is on board. He didn't just board as a passenger. He likely breached the cab or has the conductor's family held hostage. He controls the throttle. I pulled up the file, the one my father had scanned. I needed to see what Marcus saw. I needed to understand why he felt safe enough to move the bomb now. I scanned the digital artifacts of the leaked document. My eyes caught a string of metadata in the footer. It was microscopic, a ghost in the machine. Freeze that, I ordered, pointing to the screen. The tech expanded the image. It is a viewing token, I said, my voice cold. This document, the one my father scanned, it wasn't just a transport order. It was a trap. Explain, Holloway said. This specific file was watermarked, I said, the realization settling in my gut like lead. It was unique to a specific user account. It was the file assigned to our mole, to Griffin. I looked at Holloway. When my father scanned this document on an unsecured home printer, he didn't just authorize the shipment, I said. He broadcasted the watermark. He told the architect exactly whose account was being used to track him. He told Marcus that Griffin was the leak. So Marcus knows Griffin is on the train, Holloway said. He knows who Griffin is, I corrected. And he is going to kill him before he detonates that bomb. We aren't just racing a bomb, sir. We are racing an execution. We need to stop that train before it hits the city limits, Holloway said. But we can't derail it. We need to divert it. There is a switch, I said, looking at the map. 3 miles north of here, the old Navy Yard spur. It leads to a dead-end industrial wharf. If we can throw that switch, we send the train into a controlled zone, minimal casualties. The switch is digital, the tech said. But it is encrypted. We need the override code. And the only people who have that code are the senior logistics managers. Or the people who paid them off, I said. I grabbed the secure phone. Get me Miller. Put him on the screen. Now. 3 seconds later, Agent Miller's face appeared on a monitor. He was still in the conference room at the field office. Behind him, my family sat in the same chairs, looking like statues of misery. Miller, I said. I need to speak to Brent. Put a headset on him. Garcia, is this approved? Miller asked. Do it, I screamed. We have 4 minutes before the intercept window closes. Miller moved. He shoved a headset onto Brent's head. My brother looked terrified. His face was puffy from crying. Violet? Brent stammered. Violet, I am sorry. I didn't mean... Shut up, Brent, I said. Listen to me. You met the client. You met the man who called himself the representative from Zenith Global. You met Marcus. I didn't know his name was Marcus, Brent said. He said his name was Silas. Where did you meet him? I asked. Think details. Did he mention a location? Did he mention a drop point? We met at a bar in D.C., Brent said. He was intense. He kept talking about legacy, about building things that last. Did he give you anything? I pressed. A card? A file? Just the contract, Brent said. And wait, he drew something on a napkin. He was explaining the logistics of the brand. He drew a map. What kind of map? It looked like a fork, Brent said, closing his eyes, trying to remember through the fog of his panic. Like a tuning fork. He wrote a number next to it. He said, "This is where the magic happens." What was the number? Brent? I demanded. I don't remember, he sobbed. I was drinking. I was just happy to get the check. Think, I shouted. Thousands of people die if you don't remember. Brent froze. He couldn't do it. The pressure broke him. Then, a hand reached out and grabbed the microphone attached to Brent's headset. It was Danielle. She didn't look at the camera. She looked at Brent. Her eyes were blazing. 74, Danielle said. What? I asked. He told you 74, Danielle said to Brent. You told me about it the next day. You said the guy was obsessed with the number 74. You made a joke about it. You said, "Who cares about 74? I got 50,000. Brent looked at her, stunned. Yes, 74. Sector 74. I turned to the tech. Check the grid. Is there a Sector 74? The tech typed furiously. Negative on the current grid. But wait, pulling up the historical archives. The old Navy Yard spur was originally designated Logistics Node 74 during the Cold War. That is it, I said. That is his extraction point. He isn't going to crash the train into the station. He is going to divert it to the Navy Yard himself, offload the cobalt onto a boat, and vanish. He needs the switch to trigger. He has the code, Holloway realized. He is going to throw the switch manually from the cab. We have to lock him out, I said. We need to override the switch so it stays straight. Keep him on the main line where our tactical teams can hit him in the open. If we keep him on the main line, the tech argued. He enters the city. We risk the bomb. If we let him turn, I countered. He escapes with the material. We lose the cobalt. And he kills Griffin in the quiet of the rail yard. It was a binary choice. The kind of choice they test you on in the academy. But the paper test never smells like fear and diesel fuel. Wait, I said. There is a third option. Trap him. I looked at Miller on the screen. Put Ray on. No, Ray's voice came from the background. I can't talk to her. Put him on, I commanded. Miller dragged my father to the camera. Ray looked like a husk. Dad, I said, you told the agents you were being blackmailed. You said he threatened you. He did, Ray whispered. You said you had a recording, I said. A voicemail. You told Miller you deleted it, but you didn't, did you? Ray looked away. You never delete anything, I said. You are a hoarder, Dad. You kept my third-grade report card. You kept every receipt from the last 10 years. You have that recording. If I give it to you, Ray whimpered, it proves I knew. It proves I knew it was illegal. They will put me away for life. They are going to put you away regardless, Danielle shouted from the background. Give her the damn phone. Dad, people are going to die. Ray trembled. He reached into his pocket, not the pocket the agents had searched, but a hidden seam in his jacket lining. He pulled out a tiny micro SD card. I hid it, he confessed, in case I needed leverage. Miller, take it, I said. Upload it, now. Miller snatched the card. He slotted it into a reader. Uploading. The audio file hit our system in seconds. I played it. The voice was distorted, but the cadence was unmistakable. It was Marcus. Ray, listen to me. The game is simple. You verify the packet, or the bank takes the house. And Ray, if you get curious if you try to open the box, remember that I know where Violet sleeps. 74 is the key. Ray, 74 unlocks the future. He said the code, I said. He said 74 is the key. He wasn't just being poetic. That is the voice activation passkey for the switch. We can use this, I said to the tech. Broadcast this clip to the switch relay. Use his own voice to jam the command. If we jam it, the tech said, the switch freezes in a neutral position. The train will derail. No, I said. We don't jam the switch. We jam the train. I looked at the map. The train's safety systems are designed to listen for emergency broadcasts, I said. If we broadcast that voice clip, a known hostile signature, directly to the train's internal computer, the automated threat response will trigger. It will initiate a hard stop? Holloway asked. It will initiate a lockdown, I said. It will cut the throttle, lock the brakes, and seal the doors. It turns the train into a vault. But Griffin is in there, Holloway said softly. If we seal the doors, Marcus will know the system has been compromised. He will know he is trapped. He will take out his rage on the only other person in the car. I looked at the red dot. It was 2 minutes away from the junction. If I don't lock it, I said. He reaches the yard or the city, thousands die. If I lock it, Griffin is trapped in a steel box with a cornered animal. It is your call, Agent, Holloway said. I looked at the screen. I saw my father, the man whose weakness had built this bomb. I saw Danielle, the sister who had finally chosen truth over comfort. Do it, I said. Execute the lockdown. The tech hit the key. On the screen, the red dot turned white. Signal sent, the tech confirmed. Train 1105 is responding. Brakes are engaging. Doors are sealing. Deceleration confirmed. Get the tactical team in, I ordered. Breach that train the second it stops. I grabbed my headset. All units, move in. Suspect is trapped. Caution, radiological hazard. Extreme caution, hostage situation. The radio chatter exploded. Team Alpha has visual. Sparks on the rails. Train is sliding. It is stopping. Team Bravo moving to intercept. I watched the map. The train ground to a halt a mile short of the city, stranded on a lonely stretch of tracks surrounded by snow and darkness. Breach! 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 The audio from the team leader's body cam fed into my earpiece. I heard the hiss of hydraulic cutters. I heard the bang of flashbangs. Compartment clear. Moving to the engine. Contact. Shots fired. I held my breath. Suspect down. I repeat. Suspect down. Marcus is secured. He took a round to the shoulder. He is alive. I exhaled. The bomb? Container is secure. Seals are intact. No leak. And the hostage? I asked. Status on Griffin? There was a long pause. Too long. Team lead, I said. Status on Griffin. Agent Garcia, the voice came back. Heavy and static-filled. We found him. He didn't make it. Suspect executed him the moment the doors locked. I closed my eyes. The room spun. I had saved the city. I had saved the reputation of the agency. But I had signed Griffin's death warrant with a keystroke. Wait, the team lead said. Garcia, you need to hear this. The suspect is laughing. Laughing? I asked, opening my eyes. Yeah, he is bleeding out. But he is laughing. He says the scan wasn't for the cobalt. What? He says the cobalt was the distraction. The scan your father sent? The chain of custody form? It didn't just authorize a truck. It contained a rootkit. A rootkit for what? I demanded. He says you should check your own server. Garcia. He says the file didn't go out. It went in. I turned to the tech. Check the internal logs. Check the NSLD mainframe. The tech typed. His face went pale. Oh my God, the tech whispered. The printer. The connection was bidirectional. When the scan completed, it opened a tunnel. They didn't steal the map. Agent Garcia, they used the map to bypass the firewall. What did they take? I asked. They didn't take data, the tech said, his voice trembling. They uploaded a command script. It is executing now. Stop it, I yelled. I can't. It is embedded in the root directory. What does it do? The screens on the wall flickered. The map of the northeast corridor blinked out. Then, one by one, the lights on the board turned green, all of them, every traffic light, every rail switch, every drawbridge in the tri-state area. It sets everything to open, the tech said. It disables all collision protocols. I stared at the board. It was a sea of green, and then the radio crackled again. It wasn't the team lead. It was a new voice, a voice I recognized. Hello? Violet? The voice said. It wasn't Uncle Marcus. It was smoother, deeper. Who is this? I whispered. Marcus was a good soldier, the voice said. But he was just the delivery boy. You were so focused on the dirty bomb. You forgot to watch the network. Who are you? You can call me Asset One, the voice said. And I want to thank you. Your father's little scan just gave me the keys to the entire eastern seaboard. The connection cut. Sir, the tech shouted. We have multiple collision alerts. Trains are moving without clearance. The grid is blind. I looked at the empty screen where the map used to be. The bomb on the train had been a magic trick. Look at the left hand, while the right hand picks your pocket. My family hadn't just helped steal a box. They had helped someone turn off the lights for 50 million people, and the man who did it was closer than we thought. I looked at the video feed from the interrogation room. Miller was shouting into his phone. My family was looking around in confusion as the lights in the conference room flickered and died. But there was one person who wasn't confused. One person in that room wasn't looking around in panic. One person was looking straight at the camera, straight at me, with a calm, terrifying recognition. It wasn't my father. It wasn't Brent. It was the lawyer, Mr. Sterling. He looked at the lens and smiled. And in that smile, I saw the end of the world. Miller! The lawyer! Secure the lawyer! My scream tore through the audio feed, shattering the sterile silence of the command center. On the monitor, the scene inside the conference room erupted into chaos. Sterling, the man who had been calmly discussing plea bargains 3 minutes earlier, did not panic. He did not run. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black fob. It looked like a garage door opener, but I knew what it was. It was a dead man's switch, a remote trigger for the rootkit, that was currently holding the entire East Coast rail network hostage. "He has the execute key," I yelled into my headset. "Miller, do not let him press that button." Agent Miller moved with the speed of a linebacker. He didn't shout a warning. He launched himself across the mahogany table, scattering legal pads and water pitchers. He collided with Sterling just as the lawyer's thumb depressed the center of the fob. They hit the floor in a tangle of limbs and expensive wool suits. My family scrambled back, pressing themselves against the walls. My mother was screaming. Ray was frozen, staring at the man he had trusted to save him, the man who was now wrestling a federal agent for control of a device that could crash 100 trains. "I got it," Miller grunted, pinning Sterling's wrist to the carpet. "Target secured. Fob is secure." I slumped back in my chair at the command center. The technician next to me typed furiously, executing the kill command I had prepared. On the giant board, the sea of green lights flickered, turned amber, and then, one by one, returned to their normal red. The grid was locked. The collision protocols were restored. "Train 1105 is stable," the tech announced. "All signals are red. We are clear." I let out a breath that felt like it had been held for a lifetime. It was over. The bomb was secure. The network was safe. The bad guys were in handcuffs. But as I watched the feed from the conference room, where agents were now hauling a handcuffed Sterling to his feet, I realized the real wreckage wasn't on the train tracks. It was in the faces of the people standing against the wall. My father looked at Sterling, then he looked at the camera, at me, and for the first time. He didn't look angry, he didn't look scared, he looked demolished. He realized, finally, that he hadn't been a player in the game. He had been the board. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in Baltimore is a building designed to make you feel small. The ceilings are too high, the marble is too cold, and the echoes of footsteps sound like judgments being handed down from on high. I sat in the back row. I was not required to be there. I had already given my testimony in a closed deposition, but I needed to see it. I needed to see the period put at the end of the sentence. Brent stood before the judge. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. The expensive blazers, the hair gel, the swagger of the marketing executive, it was all gone. He had lost 20 pounds. He looked like a ghost. "Mr. Garcia," the judge said, "you have pleaded guilty to 1 count of unauthorized retention of national defense information. Due to your cooperation in the prosecution of Arthur Sterling and the dismantling of the Architect Network, the government has recommended a downward departure from the sentencing guidelines." Brent nodded. He didn't speak. "However," the judge continued, peering over his glasses, "ignorance is not a defense when it comes to the security of this nation. You treated a top-secret document as a social media prop. You prioritized your vanity over the safety of millions. That cannot go unpunished." The gavel came down. "I sentence you to 30 months in a federal correctional institution, followed by 3 years of supervised release." 30 months, 2.5 years. Brent closed his eyes. He didn't cry. He just slumped, accepting the weight of the time. Next came my parents. Ray and Linda stood together. They looked older, much older. My father's hair had gone completely white. My mother walked with a stoop I had never seen before. They had cut a deal, a brutal one, in exchange for testifying against Sterling, the man Ray had introduced to the family, the man who had orchestrated the entire infiltration. They were spared prison time, but the government took everything else. "Ray and Linda Garcia," the judge said, "you are sentenced to 5 years of strict probation. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $400,000 for the costs of the tactical response. Your assets, including the property at Maple Hollow and the Lake House, have been seized and forfeited to the United States Treasury." $400,000. They were destitute. They would be living in a rented 1-bedroom apartment, surviving on Social Security, with every penny of surplus income garnished by the government until the day they died. I walked out before they could turn around. I couldn't watch them be led away. I waited on the steps of the courthouse. The wind was biting. carrying the smell of rain. Danielle walked out a few minutes later. She was wearing her hospital scrubs under a coat. She looked tired. She saw me and stopped. She didn't smile. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. I had never seen her smoke in my life. 30 months, she said, lighting one. He will be 40 when he gets out. He is lucky, I said. The guidelines called for 10 years. Lucky, she repeated, exhaling a plume of smoke. Yeah, we are the luckiest family in America. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard, but the hatred was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, clinical understanding. I read the report, she said. The redacted one they gave the lawyers, about the train. You shouldn't have read that, I said. 14,000 people, she said, ignoring me. That is the casualty estimate, if that thing had breached in the station. 14,000. She took another drag. I spent my whole life thinking I was the hero, she said quietly. I save one person at a time, maybe 5 on a bad night. You saved a city. It doesn't feel like it, I said. I know, Danielle said. I still hate you. Violet, I hate that you called the raid. I hate that Mom and Dad are going to die poor and humiliated. I hate that Brent is in a cage. She flicked the cigarette onto the concrete. But I can't say you were wrong, she said. And that is what I hate the most. She turned and walked away, toward the parking garage. She didn't say goodbye. We both knew we wouldn't see each other again. The next day, I was summoned to Director Holloway's office at the NSLD headquarters. The mood was not celebratory. There were no balloons. There were no medals. In the intelligence community, success is defined by the absence of headlines. The fact that CNN was reporting a logistical glitch in the rail network instead of a nuclear disaster was my commendation. Agent Garcia, Holloway said, gesturing to a chair, the Internal Review Board has completed its findings. I am ready to surrender my badge, sir, I said. Don't be dramatic, Holloway said. You are not losing your badge. You are being reprimanded. A formal letter of censure has been placed in your file for the mishandling of classified material. You brought the packet into a non-secure environment. That was a failure. Yes, sir. However, Holloway continued, sliding a thin manila folder across the desk, your actions subsequent to the breach, specifically the identification of the rootkit and the neutralization of the hostile train, have been noted as exemplary. You saved the campaign. You saved the agency from a catastrophic failure. I looked at the folder. What is this? Your new assignment, Holloway said. Effective immediately. You are promoted to lead analyst for the Critical Infrastructure Division. I blinked. Lead analyst? There is a catch, Holloway said. You are too high risk for field work now. Your face is known to the remnants of the architects' network. And frankly, your judgment regarding remote work is compromised. He leaned forward. This position is based at the Raven Rock Mountain Complex, he said. It is an underground bunker. You will live on site during your rotation. You will work in a skiff, no cell phones, no internet access, no taking work home, because you won't have a home. Garcia, the facility is your home. I understood. It was a promotion. Yes, but it was also a quarantine. They were locking me away where my family couldn't reach me, where no one could touch me, where my basic work files would never see the light of day. I accept, I said. Good, Holloway said. One more thing. He handed me a single sheet of paper. It was a non-disclosure agreement, but it was different from the standard ones. The operation, he said. The train, the Cobalt, Sterling, it never happened. Sir, if this gets out, the public loses faith in the rail system, the economy collapses. So, as far as the world is concerned, it was a signaling error. You cannot tell anyone what you did. You cannot tell your family why they lost their house. You cannot tell your brother why he is in prison. You take this to the grave. I looked at the paper. I was being asked to carry the weight of the truth alone, forever. I would never be vindicated. My parents would die thinking I was a traitor who overreacted to a harmless prank. I picked up the pen and signed. 2 days before I deployed to Raven Rock, I went to Maple Hollow one last time. The house was empty. The for sale sign was already up on the lawn. The front door had been replaced with a cheap, unpainted slab of wood that didn't match the frame. My parents were loading the last of their boxes into a U-Haul truck. They were moving to a small apartment in Ohio, near a cousin who had offered to take them in. I parked across the street. I didn't get out. I just watched. My mother came out of the house carrying a lamp. She looked frail. She set it down on the pavement and leaned against the truck, wiping her forehead. Then, she saw my car. She froze. I rolled down the window. She walked across the street. She didn't run. She moved with a slow, painful gait. She stopped a few feet from my door. She didn't look angry anymore. She just looked hollow. "We are leaving," she said. "I know," I said. "Your father can't even look at this street," she said. "He cries every time he sees the mailbox. I am sorry, Mom." She looked at me, searching my face for something. Regret, maybe, or an apology that would fix everything. "The lawyer," she said. "Sterling, he used us?" "Yes," I said. "He did." "But you knew," she said. "You knew something was wrong. That is why you called them." "I knew the rules were broken," I said. "Was it worth it?" she asked. The question hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. "What? Was it worth it?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "For your job? For your papers? You destroyed this family. Violet, you put your brother in prison. You made your father a beggar. Was it worth it?" I looked at her. I thought about the train. I thought about the 14,000 people who had gone home to their families that night, oblivious to the fact that they had been minutes away from vaporization. I thought about the silence of the city that was still standing because I had pushed the button. And then I looked at my mother, a woman who had loved me but had never respected me, a woman who thought her curiosity was more important than my oath. "Yes," I said softly. She flinched. "But Mom?" I added, my voice cracking just a little. I still hurt every day. She didn't say anything. She just nodded, a small, sad movement. Then she turned around and walked back to the truck. She didn't look back. She got in. The engine roared to life. And I watched my parents drive out of my life forever. The apartment at Raven Rock is small. It has gray walls and no windows. The air is recycled and smells faintly of ozone. I sat on the edge of the cot, holding a cup of lukewarm tea. It was quiet. So quiet you could hear the hum of the servers in the walls. There were no birthday parties here, no anniversary dinners, no passive-aggressive comments about my job, no brothers trying to take selfies with classified intel. I was alone. I opened my laptop, the secure terminal that was now my only window to the world. I pulled up the grid. The map of the United States glowed in front of me, a web of power lines, pipelines, and rail networks. It was beautiful, it was fragile, and it was safe. I thought about what Danielle had said. I save one person at a time. I touched the screen, tracing the line of the Northeast Corridor. There are no parades for people like me. There are no thank you cards. There is only the silence of a catastrophe that didn't happen. I took a sip of tea. It was bitter, but it was warm. I had lost my family. I had lost my name. I had lost the soft, easy parts of my life. But as I looked at the green lights on the board, steady and unbroken, I knew one thing for sure. I had held the line, and in the end, that was the only family legacy I had left. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey from that first family dinner to the silence of the bunker, and I appreciate you sticking with Violet until the very end. I want to know where you are tuning in from right now. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe relaxing at home? Drop a comment below and let's get a conversation going. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button And smash the hype button so we can get this story out to more people who need a little justice in their day. Stay safe out there.